Last week on our Whack an Atheist, we started dismantling the silly teachings of Paul, who calls himself a former Christian and fancies himself to be smarter than God and his word and able to stand in judgment of both. He thinks he can judge God and his word rather than God judge him. He's in for a real surprise one day.
Paul ends up in Canada. Paulogia, he calls himself, a self-proclaimed Canadian atheist.
I don't believe that for a second.
Apparently he does not own, or maybe does not know how to use, a cult.
I don't believe that for a second.
His part of Canada must not have barbers either, but that's okay. He's good at photoshopping. He was able to put big muscles on himself. His character is muscular and square jaw. You know, the real Paul is not that way at all. I was right, you are wrong. Man did not create anything, nothing. Man don't create nothing. I was right, you are wrong. Man did not create nothing. Nothing.
Dawkins.
Correct.
Hitchens.
Correct.
Harris.
Correct.
Paulogia. I'm coming, boy, I'm coming. Hang on, just
Relax, I'll be there, okay? Here is the cartoon image he uses. Here is the real Paul. Note the added bicep, deltoid, added pectoralis major, added bicep, jawline, tough jawline.
now in real life he's small, you know, kind of scrawny, but he puts his big muscles on himself with his cartoon picture. He doesn't want to be seen.
I was right, you are wrong. Man did not create anything, nothing. Man don't create nothing. I was right, you are wrong. Man did not create. Man did not create.
Matt Dillahunty.
Right.
Lawrence Krauss.
Right.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Right. I'll debate Paulogia any day, won't I?
And the deeper voice, you gotta, how do they, it's simple to do, isn't it? Edit in a deeper voice. Because he said DNA is evidence for evolution.
Man did not create broccoli. You guys believe all the bananas came from a dot of nothing exploding. Well, let's talk about that here. DNA right here. God created the world, okay? Whether you like it or not. And you're going to face him one day, whether you like that or not, okay? And even Paulogia
Paulogia did another one today. After whacking him several times, Paul about pretending he had big muscles and a deep voice, he seems to have switched to showing his real face and physique. Wise move, Paul. Wise move. Seth Andrews.
Correct.
Joe Hansen.
Correct.
Sam and Dan did not add artificial muscles.
Correct.
Atheist Jr., his 7 viewers.
Correct.
Pro-evolution comments.
Correct.
Desperado 23.
Correct.
Commotion. The lawnmower.
Correct.
Paulogia. Bring it on.
Call me 855 Big Dino, Paulogia. Open challenge. When you want to debate again, you start off, give the best evidence you know of for evolution. I'll counter that. Then you give that best evidence number 2. I'll counter that. Fair enough? Come on. My channel, your channel, both channels. Neutral channel. Come on, Paulogia. You brave warrior. Half my brain tied behind my back. I'll debate Paulogia any day. Won't I, Paulogia? Come on. And it's time to see the real you, not the cartoon character with the muscles, okay?
I'm gonna whack this guy out of the park as soon as I get time. I've been busy.
Welcome to Paulogia Live, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians live here from Paulogia Studios in rugged Nova Scotia, Canada. Welcome to this very special late night edition of Paulogia Live. It's been quite a day, after quite a week. A lot of you, hopefully everyone within range of this, listening live or later, was okay from today's earthquake in eastern United States. Thoughts to all of you. Hopefully there's been no damage for what you've been doing. You know, I lived in California for 7 years, I guess. Yeah, 7 years in earthquake central Bay Area. And every time over those 7 years when there was an earthquake in the Bay Area, I happened to be out of town on business. So I think it was only like 3 or 4 times, but I missed every single one. So in my life, despite having lived right there on the epicenter, I have actually never experienced an earthquake myself. Anyway, trust everyone's great. I have had a long day of writing, which was exactly what I was hoping for the day, and I got my writing goals done a little bit earlier than I thought, and I thought, you know what? I've been left unsupervised. And Dave is out of town as well. Sometimes Friday nights I'm here hosting a show with Dave. Anyway, I've been left to my own devices, just me and Bella, and I figured, you know what? I am amped up on caffeine. I'm not going to be able to sleep for a long time. Let's go live. Let's hang out with whoever can be here. And we will actually take a look at a video that I've been meaning to possibly look at for quite a while. Heather says, not a real earthquake, so I guess you've declared it. Heather says, no earthquake, everybody. Anyway, this is just going to be a fun, easy hangout. Normally on this show, I will have done a little more preparation. Today, it's going to be very off the cuff. It's going to be very late, or very informal. I am drinking some rum and coke to calm myself down after the events of the day. So anyway, we're all going to join here. We're going to hang out together. We're going to interrupt for super chats. We're going to do whatever. But we're going to be covering today a video from a gentleman named Gman. Now, Gman has been on YouTube for more than a decade. I don't know how much more. Between 10 and 20 years. I have no idea when he initially started. Well, actually, I guess not before YouTube existed. So probably like around 12 years or so. Anyway, a longtime apologist, has had various channels here at various times. We have covered him once on Paulogia Live before. I believe the title of the video was something along the lines of Worst Resurrection Defense Ever. I thought we would go back to the well because he recently covered a video regarding an old atheist experience that caught my eye. And I forget the exact name, but it had doo-doo. No, it had doo-doo logic in the title. Matt Dillahunty's doo-doo logic or something along those lines. Anyway, we are going to be looking at that video tonight. Another thing to note about G-Man is that he has spoken a few times to my partner Shannon, who did leave me to my own devices tonight. And Shannon, he in one of those conversations, he said to her face that she would be lucky if someone like Bill Gates was to assault her, to SA her, because under Bible law, that would mean that Bill Gates would be forced to marry her, and therefore her life would be one of luxury and riches. And so that would be lucky. That would be fortunate. And that was his apologetic for anyone in Bible times who was so fortunate as to be assaulted, because that would be they would be forced to marry the assaulter. And anyway, that was all terrible. I'm not 100% convinced that G-Man is the worst apologist. There's other candidates whom I've even debated who are potentially worse. But I'm going to go with it for now. I think if he's not the winner, he's in the running. We have a super chat. Thank you. $5 super chat from the Ronin. Says, glad to catch the stream, Paulogia. Thanks. You're very welcome. I'm excited to hang out with whoever is awake. And yeah, and sorry, this show, for those of you who are used to my other show, that show has a Bella cam. This show is not set up for a Bella cam. She's definitely awake and looking out the window and guarding the house against any dragons that may walk by. So we'll see if we see or hear Bella in the main cam today. Aaron Colson for $2. Thank you, Aaron. Writes, how does Gman relate to Mel's hole? Well, as far as I know, not at all. But let's be looking for those connections. Let's be looking for those. I suppose one might hypothesize that what might happen if you threw G-Man down the hole, or how his theology might be affected. But now, thank you for the call back, Aaron. Appreciate you. The Ronan with another super chat. After hearing that story about Shannon, take this. Appreciate Ronan. Yeah, it's not good. He's that level of apologist. He definitely, oddly, has called into the atheist experience, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. The atheist experience. He has called in a few times to the show, as I recall, once famously to defend slavery in general, and how he felt that slavery was just fine, and that I believe he said that he would happily be a slave under the rules of biblical slavery. I won't put words in his mouth. Anyway, we are going to be looking at a particular episode that he had in the last few months where he was reviewing an atheist experience that featured Dragnaut. Now, you guys probably know Matt Dillahunty on screen there. The other gentleman on screen is Dragnaut, who's been on my channel before, my main channel, helping. He is a not a botanist. He's a biologist by trade. He works with plants in various ways, and has been on the atheist experience in the past, promoting various science literacy type topics. He and G-Man have a deep past. They have met in person. They have had feuds and friendships and a full emotional gamut. So it didn't surprise me that this was the specific episode that G-Man wanted to rant against. Anyway, we're going to listen to the caller. We're going to listen to what Matt and Dragnaut have to say. We are going to listen to what G-Man has to say. You guys let me know where we want to go from here. We'll see how long we can do this. It is, for me, nearly 2 a.m. And I'm starting a stream at 2 a.m. So that's a great idea, right? All right. We do have a couple super chats before we start. Just got home from watching Evil Nuns, The First Omen, to find Paul live. What a great evening. Ooh, Jeff, I'm curious as to how that is. Last, on Toast to Toast, which is a show on this channel, we have occasionally covered exorcisms and the like. So I have somewhat of a curiosity about that. I hope you had a great evening, and hopefully this doesn't drag you down too much. Welcome, Jeff. And Senior Cinema, more vids on Catholics like Trent Horn / Jimmy Aiken. I do need to do more videos about Catholics for sure. I recently had a discussion with an Anglican, and for a Protestant atheist like me, to me, Anglicans and Catholics sure seem very similar, but I know it's not entirely the case. If you guys have any, especially Senior Cinema, if you have any Catholics you'd specifically like to hear me talk about or invite on, then yeah, drop it in a comment or in the chat. Michael, any bingo cards tonight? No bingo cards. This is Paulogia Live. It's not Toast to Toast. That is the most needlessly complicated stream on YouTube. And when it is on, it is the only stream on YouTube. This is simple Paulogia Live. It's a little bit more, we're normally a little more formal here. We don't have all those same bells and whistles. But yes, it is 2 a.m. in Nova Scotia, where I live, absolutely, or getting close to it. So it's a good time to start our stream. His stream is several hours long. I don't intend to do that. I'm hoping to cover the first caller if we get that far. And if we are cumulatively having fun with other things, we don't even need to cover it. But we'll start with this, see where it goes. I'm not starting at the start of his stream. He had quite a lengthy preamble. I cut straight to the point where he starts reviewing the Atheist Experience show. And for Disclosure, I've cut in a little bit from his general thing so that we could see more of his face. I felt like we didn't need to see as much of the background, but you're all good. Link to the original video is in the description if anyone needs to fact check anything from that. But that said, off we go.
With the collection
So we have a list of callers here.
Yes.
You get to pick who you'd like to
Timmy
speak
Thompson,
to first.
I agree that Matt Dillahunty is boring, but at the same time, he is dangerous. Not everyone is educated enough to deal with Matt Dillahunty. Not everyone has the spiritual gifts to be able to deal with him.
Let me know in the chat if you can hear sufficiently, whether any volumes need to be adjusted.
That's why it takes individuals out there who are aggressive with defending the faith to deal with somebody like him. And there are definitely Christians out there that Matt Dillahunty fears having a one-on-one dialogue with. I assure you of that.
If there are, I don't know who they are. I'm actually hosting with Matt, I guess technically tomorrow on the Sunday show. I guess I can ask him if there's any Christians that he fears. As far as I know, there aren't any Christians he fears. There are certainly some he's not willing to share a stage with, share a platform with. Anyway, I leave that to Matt to defend, I guess.
Oh man, I
Just line number, whatever.
man, we have some recognizable names here, and one of which will be saved for last. Actually, let's do the number 6.
Line 6. Matt, you are on with Dragnot and Matt. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm exceptional.
Now, one of the things that you're going to notice about the atheist experience, and I mentioned this earlier, I'm going to mention this again. Whenever Matt is talking to someone on the phone, Matt wants to say the least amount of things as possible. Why? Because he wants you as a theist to make as many claims as possible so he can ask you to prove it.
Well, it is a call-in show where the point of the atheist experience and other call-in shows that Matt works on, including the Sunday show on the line, which Matt and I will be hosting in a day or so. The people are supposed to call. The point of the show is for people to call in and express what they believe and why, and they are presumably bringing a topic of sorts. It really wouldn't make sense for a call-in show to have you call in and then immediately have the hosts attack you with various views that may not be related to why you called in. Just that I don't quite imagine what Gman wants to happen here. He wants someone to call in and Matt and the co-host unload on them, I guess. Giving them time to unpack their case, it certainly seems like a virtue to me, but okay, if you want to complain about that, I guess that's for you.
It's different when you have them in a room like this. When I do a debate arena, Gman versus the world, or if you go to Veckel's Thank God for Atheism, or if you go to Clubhouse and you got to have that conversation, they're quick to make a bunch of claims, right? But whenever they engage with you on the phone in the beginning, they want to say the least amount of things as possible because they want to put all of the onus on you.
I mean, again, I think I just expressed that's kind of how this goes, right? Again, if you're calling in, you need the first amount of the call to unpack your case. It's not like the people who you phoned know what you wanted to talk about or what your views are or why you hold them. It would be weird to have a show where the hosts just want people to call in and then unleash what they were going to say, regardless of who phoned in. That would just be a non-call-in show. They could just be a live show where the hosts were expressing opinions about whatever. This is a weird objection. Again, I can understand the frustration of a Christian who might want to say that some atheists try and avoid the burden of proof on the God question, but that's not always the question. And again, this is just a weird objection.
Okay, that's why Matt don't want to deal with certain people, because some of us know this and we know how to get around it.
Uh-oh. Matt's in the chat. Look out. Look out. Yes, Matt, G-Man is still alive and kicking and streaming, and he has critiques of you and Dragnot. And so we're going to be looking at that tonight.
I just had a couple of questions for you that I'd like to ask, and it's great that you have the scientist guy on there because it has to do with the collection of evidence and how one would interpret it as it relates to miracles.
Cool.
Okay, so I've heard you say before in debates that if one was to want to posit a miracle as an explanation for something that took place in the distant past, that they would have to see miracles happening now. Would you agree with that?
Before Matt answers, no, that's a weird question for the caller to ask. It's maybe not weird. Certainly, one wants to be able to see that miracles are a candidate option before putting it on the table. But that miracle need not be in the present. It's just the proof of any miracle would be fine.
That they would have to be demonstrable. Like
No, I don't think you would have to see a miracle now in order to confirm a miracle in the past.
Night, Matt. We'll have fun without you. We would have had fun with you, but we will also have fun without you.
My answer is okay. I have no idea how one would go about confirming a miracle either in the past or now, but certainly it's more difficult if you're trying to analyze a miracle claim from long in the past.
Before we go any further, ladies and gents, let's define what a miracle is. What a miracle is. And I'm going to define this so that everybody that's watching this understands what a miracle is. And I'm going to define this so that anybody watching this in the future can understand what a miracle is.
This is great news because Christians, my entire life, and as far as I can tell, for 2,000 years, Christians have been debating what the proper definition of miracle is. So Gman is going to lay it out, not for only people watching his streams, but everyone in the future generations. That includes you guys. You're not going to be blessed. Let's hear what it is. Gman's definition of miracle.
And I'm going to make sure that I try to make this as easy as possible. See, the atheist wants things to be hard for you to understand. I want you to be able to understand everything that's coming out of my mouth.
Yes, famously, the atheists are trying to obfuscate things where Christians are looking for clarity. That's just famously, that's the take.
Okay. When you see a miracle, there is no scientific explanation for it. Remember that. Wow.
When you see a miracle, there's no scientific explanation for it. Apparently, that's the definition. That doesn't seem to be in definition form, but that's fine. When you see a miracle, there's no scientific explanation for it. So, I'm telling you what, everybody. Is it a miracle that, for example, the Christian family who were praying for a safe journey, that if their car runs out of gas slightly before a large truck is going to blow through an intersection and hit them, if a Christian thinks that's a miracle, they're wrong because there's a scientific explanation for it. Your car ran out of gas. All cars run out of gas. Not a miracle. If you pray to God to take away your headache, you have no access to any medication. You just pray to God, take away your headache, and boom, your headache's gone. Science can explain it, so not a miracle. Again, it's funny that this is the definite. He's very, very limiting on what God's involvement could potentially be. I think it's much wiser for a Christian and, for example, Fan, who recently debated Matt on the resurrection, had a much better definition of miracle, and that is, where God is intervening in the natural world. That seems to make a lot more sense. But no, to G-Man is just limited to things that have no natural explanation, which, of course, as far as I'm concerned, I'm unaware of anything that's ever happened that doesn't have a natural explanation. So, no miracles? I guess we're done here.
How they're talking about this. A miracle has no scientific explanation for it whatsoever. It is miraculous. There is no science. It is scientifically impossible for a miracle to happen. That is why they don't believe in miracles. Very
well, yeah, because you've defined it weirdly as things that have no scientific explanation. Oddly, I guess what that means for G-Man is anything that we currently don't have a specific scientific explanation for, we do a skeptic must believe that that is a miracle. So, you know, how the movement of quarks work, or what was the nature of the singularity before the Big Bang, or literally anything that what is the role of the God particle? There's like all the things anything that science is still investigating. If we, so, you know, several years ago, if the potential cure for polio was a miracle, but now it's not a miracle. This is just, again, weird definition.
Important you remember this to be able to crush these people and to shut them up down the road.
Yes, this is exactly the kind of conversations everyone should have. Gman's goal is to crush the people and shut them up. Good job.
But let's listen to a little bit more of this, because I'm going to give you one of the biggest miracles that they do believe, especially Mr. Dillahunty.
Okay. And would you say that, like, if miracles did happen on a very regular basis now and were repeatable scientifically and things of that nature, like, from a science perspective, would a scientist see something that is, you know, supposedly an anomaly in science, and they were to see that it's repeatable, would they then determine that if they couldn't explain it, that it was a miracle, or would they just call it like an unexplainable natural phenomenon?
If there is a phenomenon that is happening that is inexplicable, right, that we can investigate, then I hate to break it to you, it's not supernatural. So calling it a
Exactly. Very good, Dreadnought. Yeah, the callers, maybe to give him grace, maybe is the kind of Christian I was and didn't really have a great grasp of science, had just a very rudimentary grasp of science, and thinking that testable and repeatable is the pinnacle of what science is, not understanding that the pinnacle of science is making testable predictions, not, you know, this repeatable stuff. Although obviously, for certain claims, repeatability is the demonstration of predictive power. So they're not mutually exclusive.
miracle.
So you would agree that?
Well,
So we can investigate it, we can see how it happened, then it's not a miracle then, right? Let's actually take this theory to the test here a little bit, because a lot of people that will watch my channel will say that, you know, I'm arrogant, that I'm cocky, and I'm all this other stuff. No.
Who would say such a thing? I can't imagine.
I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And I know when I'm listening to dumb people. All right. Listen to me here. Okay.
Okay. I think I just gave grace to this caller, whom I, you know, empathize with, probably was like me, maybe not as well versed in science. Contrast that with Gman. Just decide. I didn't know this is coming. Just I know when I'm listening to dumb people. Tip of the hat to you there, Gman.
Listen to me. The Big Bang, was that a miracle, or is that scientific, or can that be explained scientifically?
Yeah, that's actually the example I gave earlier. By Gman's definition, because we can't yet explain it scientifically, the false dichotomy he's given is explained scientifically or miracle. So the Earth being round for a long time was a miracle, apparently, or the shape of the Earth was miraculous, but now it is not miraculous. I don't know.
The atheist will tell you that that the Big Bang theory can be explained scientifically. That a singularity, about the size of a dot on the page in a book, about the size of a period, got so hot.
The correct answer to that is not that it is about the size of a period on the size of a page. We're not saying, hey, the scientists have measured it, they've done their math, and they've decided that the size of a period is the size that it is, or roughly. No. They say smaller. They just want people to be able to imagine, so they even say smaller than a period on a page. But of course, at this point, the singularity isn't a practical concept we can know the size of. And in fact, does it even have a size? Is it appropriate to say that prior to the expansion of space-time? So it may not have existed in 3 dimensions at all. So maybe 10 dimensions, maybe one. Like, we just don't know anything about it. But I get your rudimentary explanation. I absolutely would have bought that too. And it's not inaccurate to say smaller than a dot on the side of the page. So let's be pedantic, I guess.
That one day it expanded. And then there's a lot of things that took place, for the universe to be created and whatnot.
Over the last 12 years, he's learned that it didn't explode. So that's good. He's learned that it expands. So awesome.
But let's just stick with the singularity. If it's scientific, they should be able to tell us where the singularity came from. They have.
No, that's not the way that. It's not the way that works. It's not things if science can use the Big Bang Theory to make testable predictions, like they did with the cosmic microwave background radiation, for example, that doesn't mean that we can explain steps past it. So again, just like we can explain a lot of things in biology with evolution, none of that is false because we don't have all the mechanisms of abiogenesis figured out yet. So this is a weird category that doesn't make sense. It doesn't mean that the singularity is a miracle. It just means we don't have those answers yet.
Ideas about the singularity coming in and out of existence. Can they prove this? No, they cannot. Can they prove it scientifically? No, they cannot. What they can do is give you what they think happened. Okay, let's look.
Yeah, that's pretty much all that scientists ever do on the best day, is tell you what they think happened, because we don't do proofs in science. Proofs are reserved for math, or maths if you're from the across the pond. Yes, positing potential explanations and debating which explanation has the best predictive power. That is what scientists do. That's a feature, not a bug.
Look at it another way. Okay. Do we see singularities today? Because some of them will claim that the singularity is a dead star. And
I've never heard that before. Some say the singularities are a dead star. No, we have lots of dead stars. I don't know if he's confusing black holes with singularities, with the singularity. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a cosmologist. I'm not qualified to make those distinctions, but I have never heard that the singularity that kicked off our universe was a dead star, because that would be weird, because then you'd have to have a universe that had stars in it. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. I don't think I've heard that one before. I think I would want better citation than a guy told me, personally.
Claim that we see dead stars all the time.
Also, he asked if we see singularities today. Well, I don't imagine that the singularity was something that was visible to people, not only just because it was existed prior to, in whatever sense that makes sense, space-time existing. So obviously there weren't, I shouldn't say obviously, but there weren't human entities around at that time. I don't know that light existed, so I don't know that we would be able to see it. But again, if there are singularities around, I don't know why we'd expect them to be in the Earth's atmosphere necessarily. The space is vast. There might be other singularities out there. Again, I also don't know exactly what it is we would see. If indeed they are similar to black holes, they would be to an extent where light can't escape them. So I guess we would see the effects of the gravity. That's how we see black holes now. We don't see them, but we are aware of their effect. I don't know. It's a weird question. Why don't we see singularities today? Okay.
How does a dead star create a universe? Where is the scientific evidence? Where is the observation And where are the tests that we can do over and over and over again to prove that this event actually happened the way the atheists did? Because remember now.
So there's a difference. Again, science is the main goal in science is to be able to make future predictions, right? The accuracy of your future predictions. That's why when we say, look, we're going to drop this pen to the desk, and it's going to take roughly the same amount of time every single time, given that the atmosphere isn't, I'm not changing my elevation and a lot of those other factors, and the aerodynamics of the pen isn't changing. Again, when conditions are staying the same, can you predict how fast it's going to fall? Yeah, that's repeatability, but it's ultimately predictive power. When you have singular events, you don't have repeatability. So, for example, if someone gets injured or hurt with a knife or killed, and there is blood spatter from a particular artery, you look at the blood spatter on the wall and you compare it to different blood spatters that have happened before, but you don't get to relive that exact person's blood spatter. I mean, these are one-time events. So the predictions you're making are, is this the kind of blood spatter that happens from an artery wound? And you look at all of them in the past, and there are one-time events. At least one time in our universe was the Big Bang event, the expansion of space-time. So we're not looking to, that event doesn't have to be repeated for us to learn things about it. That's all I'm saying.
According to them, there's no intelligence involved with it whatsoever. Just something that happened. And they believe this.
We do.
If you can't explain it, scientifically speaking, it's a miracle. But I'll do you one.
Okay. Everything we can't explain scientifically is a miracle. That's a weird definition, but if you want to label everything unknown as miracles, then you're weirdly, by definition, putting God into the God of the gaps category, because we're learning more and more things. And so fewer and fewer things that have God's involvement, presumably in the Christian worldview, can be labeled miracles anymore, because now we can explain it. So that's a dying proposition.
Even better. What caused the bang? Right? There are certain scientific laws that has to be followed regardless of what your belief system is.
Actually, we don't necessarily know that the laws of physics that we enjoy in our particular instantiation of space-time hold in a world, and the world before and the world outside of are the best we got. They don't necessarily work well, but without space and time, do the laws of physics hold? That's an open question. It may not. Our laws of physics may not hold.
Why can't they explain the scientific laws associated with the Big Bang? They can't do it. The Big Bang is universally seen by us Christians as being something that is supernatural, if it indeed happened. But they're claiming that if it can be observed and it can be tested by scientists, and scientists can figure out certain things, you know what I mean, then it's not a miracle. Yet to this very day, and I've been on YouTube for a while.
I think that's what you were saying. I think what you were saying is, if science explains it, it's not a miracle. But okay.
11, 12 years on here, and I'm still waiting for somebody to explain the bang to me. Erica can't do it. David Dinosaur can't do it.
They both specialize in biology, so they're not cosmologists. I don't know who you're looking for, but also, depending on what you mean by explain it to you, we can explain the part we know. Your question about where did it come from may well be a nonsense question. It may be eternal in some sense, because we can't really very well describe the state of existence of something without time. So you're asking what is probably a nonsense question.
Dragnet, Mr. Science Guy can't do it. Bill Nye, the science guy, can't do it. And by the way, he's not a real scientist. Steve McRae can.
Other than Erica, the only person you've listed so far are not real scientists. I don't know what a real scientist means. Bill Nye was, yes, his degree was in engineering. But by your definition, Charles Darwin wasn't a scientist, which you probably actually would believe. But let's see. Galileo was not a scientist by your definition, right? Because the word science hadn't even been invented yet. If you're getting really pedantic, you know, these are words that shouldn't apply.
Do it. Aaron Ra can't do it. Thunderfoot can't do it. None of these scientists can do it. And it's gotten to the point that
their inability to explain something to your level of understanding does not actually indicate whether that thing is true or not. Some things are very complicated. Some we could place the blame on those people as communicators. Perhaps they're not effective enough communicators, or perhaps you are unwilling or unable to understand it. These are all candidate options.
there are scientists that are actually dissenting from this kind of thinking. It's called the descent of evolution, where scientists are actually saying, well, we don't necessarily believe this stuff anymore.
Yes. So Gman is locked in a lot of ways. Several decades ago, he thinks most of what his perception of all this stuff is kind of a snapshot from 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so I lost my train of thought. The chat has distracted me. I'll let it keep playing.
But anyway, let's continue.
And we have a super chat. Mac the Human. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Appreciate you. Just tipping our very suave and bright host. I like you, dude. Well, thank you. I'm not feeling particularly suave. I just went ahead on the whole. I've been working all day, and screw it, we're just gonna go stream. But I appreciate you. Appreciate the super chat and the compliments and the like you too. Thank you very much, Mac the Human.
The big thing, so there were a couple confusing things in there because it sounded like you said something that was refuted by science. Is that what you said? Or
No, repeatable.
Repeatable.
Like repeatable science.
So we have
like
we have
do tests on it.
I'm trying to understand. You're talking about a phenomenon that is occurring that's repeatable. First of all, we don't define thing as inexplicable because that's a declaration that
one of the most unscientific things that I think is absolutely hilarious is abiogenesis. One of these days, I mean, I don't know if the Lord's going to have me talk about that today, but abiogenesis is one of the funniest things going out there. They actually believe that actually happened, yet they can't.
As do theists. So abiogenesis is entirely, all that means that its root level is life from non-life, right? So when God said on day, let's say 4, I forget, I'm going to count plants as life, right? Let there be life. Then there would have, even by that strict literal definition, there was no life on the world. Then God said something, and then there was life. So Gman accepts that can happen. He wants to insist, and that's actually fine. He wants to insist that God is necessary for it to happen. That's fine, but what he's trying to say is that it can't happen or never did happen, when obviously by his own mythology it absolutely did happen. For people who are materialists and naturalists who think that God isn't necessary to explain the life that we see, there wouldn't have actually been such a singular point. There is a spectrum between chemistry and chemistry that involves carbon, and then what we would call actually life, right? Those are all separate things. Or they're not separate things. There's a spectrum between all those, and there is no specific hard line. Anyway, I think this is one of those things where he willfully doesn't want to understand it. But if he thinks it's hilarious, I point you to Genesis 1.
Tell us what the environment was. They can't tell us how the cell survived or any of that stuff. The Euro-Miller experiment was a failure, and they haven't been able to reproduce what supposedly happened during the days of abiogenesis. So,
okay, so the Euro-Miller experiment, for those who are unfamiliar, was the first of many experiments that have happened that attempt to determine whether we can get some of the building blocks of life in a lab without intervention, right? And definitely from those experiments, we've seen different levels of proteins and I don't know if proteins, at least amino acids. And I know that there are definitely experiments where we've seen amino acids become protein, and I know proteins will organize themselves into peptides, and I'm not a biologist, so I may be saying some of these things wrong, but some of these we've definitely seen some of these organizational steps. The fact that no one in a lab has gone from step 0 to step, I don't know, like 100,000 or a million, like I don't know how many steps are from that to what we would call the first single-celled organism. That's what Gman imagines. He wants to imagine that we will get to there and we will, push a button and go from raw materials to a single-celled organism in one step somehow, since that's what his God did, and at least as he thinks. Again, none of these experiments were failures because none of them were attempting to go from purely chemicals to a living organism. We are generations, I don't even know how many generations away from that level of knowledge. But again, if G-Man has children and anyway, our great grandchildren who are arguing over this same issue, perhaps at that point in time, if indeed in a lab we're able to get from chemicals to DNA reliably over and over again, will Christians then insist that God wasn't involved? Like, no, that's silly. These are silly questions to ask.
anyway, let's continue.
Is unexplainable, and that's different from unexplained. And so when we observe something and we don't currently have an explanation for it, we keep going until we get an explanation. And at no point does our
Now, mind you, he's also going to tell you that whenever they get new information, then they will change their position. You know what that meant? What they believed prior to that was wrong. Every time new information has to come in order for something to be true, the information that came before that was wrong.
Well, not necessarily wrong. It may be imprecise. Again, we don't live in a binary world where everything is right or wrong. Certain things have degrees of correctness. So, for example, I may say outside that it is above freezing right now. It wasn't earlier today. It was below freezing, but it's above freezing right now. And then later I might learn that, oh no, it's 1 degree. Okay, that's a refinement. That's a more accurate measurement, and I know more now than I did when I just said randomly above freezing. But above freezing was still correct, right? So we can get new information causes us to refine what we know. And sometimes it overturns it. So if I, for example, if I was imagining that my dog was still indoors, but then I look out the window and she is outdoors, well, then I was wrong. I was clearly wrong to assume that she was indoors. There are things that overturn other things. But again, that's a feature, not a bug. I guess in G-Man's ideal world, I would continue to insist that my dog was indoors when I see her escaping out the window. Somehow that's better to G-Man. I don't know. It's a little weird. It's a little weird to insist that the stance that I come to a conclusion and nothing can assuage me is a noble, honorable thing, is a good epistemology. That's just bananas.
So they don't care about being wrong for 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. When that new information comes, they're not going to eat humble pie and admit that they were wrong. This isn't something reliable.
Yes, scientists love to be wrong. That is the favorite thing of all scientists. It is to discover that something we thought we knew was wrong. Science has no problem. I mean, obviously there's some resistance for individuals, but science as a whole is happy to be wrong.
That something, and this is not a way a person should live their life, by believing a lie for 20 to 100 years or whatever. When by faith you can say, I trust that God knows what he's doing, and that he is intimately involved with the creation, and he had something to do with it, that a mind was actually involved in this. But you can't tell that to an atheist because they swear they're scientists when they're not.
So that's again a false dichotomy, because everything I've described tonight in terms of science and evolution and cosmology, there are millions of Christian scientists who affirm the things that I've poorly explained because I myself am not a scientist. And only a few years ago would have agreed with Gman on most of what he was saying here. So there's no dichotomy. It is a false dichotomy to say that we accept these new scientific learnings or we think that God was involved, because there are millions of people who absolutely think that all these theories are correct and that God was involved. These are not dichotomies. What, of course, some of us don't see a special reason to include God. The more and more things that are explained by science, the more some of us squint and say, well, I don't really see where God is necessary here. And that's fine. But G-Man is just throwing other Christians under the bus here.
Sense of an explanation mean that we get to say, oh, that's a miracle.
Okay. So like if it was the case that you say witnessed maybe 10 or 15 people throughout the course of, the last 150 years or so who died and then were, resurrected, and this could be demonstrably proven by science.
Happens all the time.
Dead.
Happens all the time.
Okay, but I mean like
people, no.
Like after a public execution.
Okay.
Like somebody's beheaded.
Yeah, so we behead somebody, and then 3 days later they're up and walking around, and we've had them under we've had them under proper test conditions where we're observing them the entire time. Yeah, that'd be really incredible. Do you have anything remotely like that?
That's the question. In fact, that's roughly the video I made earlier this week. For those of you who saw my video on my main channel regarding the three-body problem and Mike Licona's resurrection debate claims. Mike keeps coming up with these hypotheticals about, well, would you believe in miracles of X? Would you believe in miracles and Y? Would you believe in miracles? I mean, a lot of times the answer is, nah, probably not. But also, do you have anything like that? Can we live in the world of the evidence you do have instead of these weird hypotheticals? So yeah, so the caller says, if we kept beheading people and they kept coming back to life, there must be a movie. I'm not Highlander. If you lose your head, you lose your life. I know there's lots of movies where people just don't die, or even The Walking Dead, right? The heads still live. You have to kill the brain. So you behead the people. Anyway, doesn't matter. Although if you think of some movies, name them in the chat, because some is niggling me now that I can't think of the one I'm trying to think of. Anyhow, the caller wants to say, if we're beheading people and we have now we have a procedure for, or maybe it's not a procedure, it just so happens that they keep coming back to life. Obviously, we would start to look at things, but if we could find the natural mechanism, we would learn and we would adjust our expectations that, hey, spontaneous head attachment and or head regeneration is now a thing that is possible in nature. And yeah, we would adjust, and we would probably try and figure out ways to make that happen for amputees and for other people. Yeah, absolutely. Weird hypothetical.
I know, but my question is,
I know that we have cancer going into remission, people having HIV and HIV completely disappearing in their body. people having AIDS and AIDS completely leaving their body. And you want to know why it left? Because people actually prayed about it.
No. I mean, maybe. But I had cancer. And it went into remission. Now, I got treatment, as probably did everyone the Gman just referred to about all of the various claims he just made. But even so, I spent the good chunk of several years every single day on the cancer ward. And I can tell you that there are people whose cancer went into remission in ways that were not responding necessarily to treatment, but the body had natural remission. That is, and no one was surprised. Literally no one on the cancer ward was surprised about this. They wish they could predict when it would happen and help to, have ways to help make this natural remission happen. But certain cancers have natural remissions. Not surprised. I was going to say slightly off topic, but hey, we're doing a weird random late night stream, so there's no such thing as off topic. I made it part of my mission to, whenever I would be alone with a doctor or nurse or anyone working in the cancer ward, to ask them what they thought about miracles and whether they'd ever seen a miracle. And I didn't ever let them know what my position on this was. I was just asking because I wanted to just learn. I figured, yeah, I'm here. Let's learn about miracles. And what I learned was that the policy of the cancer hospital that I was at was that if any patient wants to believe that anything at all is the result of divine intervention or a miracle, that as long as it didn't violate anything personally, in which case they're just supposed to shut up. But if they could, they were supposed to just give minimal play. They were supposed to play along minimally. They weren't supposed to encourage that it definitely was a miracle. But if the patient or the family thinks something's a miracle, the staff is instructed to play along to some extent, because that allows the patient, that kind of mental state is proven to help the patients, feel more positive and feel like if God's got a mission for their life, God's got something for me, then I'm definitely going to get involved. So when I sometimes hear, oh, well, the doctor agreed with me that it was a miracle, or the nurse agreed with me it's a miracle, I've talked to dozens of staff like this. Now, granted, it was all from one location, but it seems like the principle may well hold that when the patient thinks it's a miracle, the staff's just going to play along. So you telling me that the doctor played along, that it was a miracle, doesn't tell me that it was unexplained. And again, as Matt said, unexplained right now is not synonymous with unexplainable, right? We may learn things in the future. Gman doesn't want anyone's worldview to include new information for some reason. But for the rest of us, we take new information on board.
Cancer going into remission because people actually prayed about it. But they don't want to believe that. They want to believe that it's science. So science can explain it. Science cannot explain it. It cannot explain it. But they'll try, though. They'll try.
If that
my favorite part is that we're all related to popcorn and we all share a common ancestor with jelly beans. You know what I mean? But they believe that too without any.
So G-Man, like so many creationists, think that it's a weird gotcha to come up with another life form on the planet and derogatorily say, well, you think you're related to your dog or to a fern or to, as G-Man just said, popcorn. When most people who understand how evolution works, as long as that thing, was alive, we nod and we say, well, yeah, at some point we have a common ancestor with that thing. Yeah, that's not weird. That's borne out by genetics. It's borne out by all the other lines of evidence for evolution. But you lose some of your teeth to your argument when you say jelly beans, right? It shows that you don't, it demonstrates that perhaps you don't understand the insult you're trying to hurl. If you want to say mildew, or you want to say, beetles, or like pick a thing, pick sloth, or I don't know what you think might be insulting. I know strawberries comes up often for some reason. Whatever, pick those things. But when you pick something that isn't alive, then we just have to assume that you're no longer being insulting. You're just perhaps being uninformed.
Evidence.
Case would a scientist then say, "Oh, well, we're going to call this a miracle"? Or
No. Hang on. Let's get off the miracle label, because that's irrelevant. What would happen is a scientist would say, "Hey, we have a dozen accounts now that are well documented of
Matt
some."
Dillahunty is incorrect. There are many people who are scientists that actually believe in miracles.
Yes, that, as I explained earlier, there are plenty of scientists who accept all the things that Gman rejects. Absolutely. And internally, they may well say, you know what? I think that God may have intervened with some situation we're talking about here, or that, if we're talking about the origin of the universe, perhaps God intervened, blah, blah, blah. But when that Christian scientist is at work, they don't look in a microscope. They don't look at data. They don't look at the CERN collider and the readings from that and say, hey, guess what, supervisor? Guess what, boss? Guess what, everyone who's invested? Miracle. And they would say, hey, aren't we here to learn how God does things? Isn't that famously what science is to, to peer at the mind of God and learn how God does things? No, God, this thing, we can't know how God did it. We can know how God makes rain. We can know how God spins the earth on its axis. We can know all these things about God, but this new thing, no, we don't know how. No. Methodological naturalism is setting aside whether or not something is supernaturally caused and attempting to study it based on its naturalistic basis. Again, methodological naturalism is the right way to operate. What you wouldn't want to do, G-Man, is to go to court where someone has, you're suing someone, or someone has assaulted you or stolen something from you, and that person goes to court and says, you know what, judge and jury, a demon, demon, we can't know how this stuff ended up in my possession because demons. And so let's just call it up. Let's wrap it up call it a day. Because, just demons or supernatural somehow. And everyone says, oh, I guess it was demons. Huh. And everyone goes home. No, that's not the way we do it. We have a super chat from Fern. You guys may have to let me know in the chat. I don't have a co-host today to keep keep both eyes peeled on the super chats. Hope I don't miss any. Fern Love Bond, appreciate you for $2. But my kids did come from me with a sad face. Oh, well, in a way, I mean, I don't know, Fern, if you were, I'm not assuming that your gender one way or the other. But perhaps, the half of the genetic material was yours. Perhaps, if you were the mother, then you carried the person from within inside you. Yeah, I guess that all makes sense. But yeah, they did.
Let me say this again. There are scientists that not only believe in God, they not only believe in Christ, but they believe in miracles too. So Matt,
and they don't bring it up at work. Or if they're scientists, they don't put that in their papers. That does not go in the data. It is not in the charts. Here's where the miracle happened. No. even if that is where a miracle happened, what they would investigate is they would, again, if suddenly heads were reattaching to bodies, maybe everyone in the room would get, these are miracles, but they would still not write that on the chart. They would still not make that part of the observation.
Isn't correct. Matt's talking about how atheist scientists would do what he's talking about.
No, any scientist, G-Man, you are clearly not a scientist. Nor am I. But at least I talked to them.
Someone having their head lopped off and then getting up and walking around 3 days. Do we have an explanation for that? No. And until you have an explanation, you don't get to claim what the explanation is.
So basically, he set the stage for you never believing in a miracle. If somebody's head got cut off and that person just got up and started walking and whatnot, because there's no scientific explanation for it, we can't deem it a miracle. It just happened and we don't understand why it happened.
Yes, we don't understand is not the same as saying it's not a miracle. We would reserve judgment and say, hey, can we perhaps, investigate to find out more? Again, it's weird that Christians and theists want their, whatever your first thought that it must be a miracle, they want that to be our first thought and no other considerations, no other checks, no other whatever. We don't even want us to check to see if maybe these beheadings were illusions, because perhaps you've seen a magic show where someone was cut in half or lost their head or was on a guillotine. I've actually seen that effect at a Las Vegas show where a guillotine was used to allegedly chop someone's head off, and then later on they were alive. So G-Man doesn't even want us to check that. For whatever reason, you just have to, whatever your first answer is, that's the only answer you're allowed. And if it's not miracle, you're a stubborn idiot, apparently.
They make these arguments in these situations where you can never come to the position or never come to the conclusion that God has something to do with it. And I personally think it's borderline retardation for a person to get on social media and to get.
Man, so if some of you who are with me when I do Toast to Toasts, we are often dealing with shows from the early 90s. And that word comes up sometimes. Yeah, I didn't expect it to be on a stream from 2024. I mean, again, whatever. I'm going to leave it.
On here and say somebody's heads got cut off and they're getting up and walking around and socializing with people, that's not a.
We've established that he's not maybe the best human in the world. I think we've established that.
Miracle. That this man clearly doesn't know what a miracle is. If it cannot be explained scientifically, it is a miracle.
We beat that one to death. I'm now gonna let that slide. Just fill in the blank for that. That is a non-useful definition and is a definition that will only make God less and less probable every year that goes on as science learns more, and is a weird place to hang your hat.
And that goes not only for the scientists who are exploring it, but for the non-scientists who want to claim that it's supernatural. Because supernatural is something that you need to demonstrate.
It would not be ever called a miracle then, right? You would just say
somebody would call it a miracle. What difference does it make? Somebody's going to call it a miracle now. What difference does it make if they call it a miracle? What we're talking about here is, can you demonstrate supernatural causation or not?
Yes, we can.
And the answer would be
how? That would be great, G-Man. Why did you just say yes, we can, and stop your stream when you said so many other weird things? If you know the answer to how to demonstrate supernatural causation, you need to get off YouTube. You need to stop whatever jobs you're doing during the day. You need to get this written up, or just even put it on YouTube. Just get this out into the public. We need to know how you can demonstrate supernatural causation, and not just the yeah, we can, because some of us really want to know. Please let us know.
No, from your perspective, I assume. Is that correct?
Has anybody ever?
We can show supernatural causation is number one. We can look at the Big Bang and we can look at intelligent design. Okay, and that is definitely not the only way too. There's also the
Oh, okay. So that's my bad. I thought he was talking about supernatural causation in the sense that most normal humans would talk about. If, in fact, supernatural causation is defined as with Gman as anything science doesn't have a complete and full answer for today on April 6th, 2024, that's a miracle. So that's just synonymous with currently unknown. So I didn't realize that that meant supernatural causation. So, okay, anything, yeah. I'm guessing right now the earthquake felt in the United States is supernatural because I'm guessing scientists don't have a complete picture yet. They may in a few days of exactly what caused that earthquake. I know that they'd have categories of explanations, but they may not know which one. Or again, perhaps today there's been an accident or a murder where that murder is not yet solved. So by G-Man's definition, we currently need to assume that those murders were supernatural. Great definition, incredibly useful.
Well, I ain't gonna say presupposition argument. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but intelligent design is science, so you can do it that way, and you can show with the Big Bang because there's no scientific evidence. I'm sorry, there's no way you can scientifically prove that the Bang actually happened.
You can scientifically prove, well, depends on what you mean by prove, but we can prove that what the Big Bang model proposes happened because we're living in the universe that it proposes. So in a weird way, that's not a proof, but it's because again, science doesn't deal in proof. What we can't actually, I think what you mean is we can't prove that that's why this result is. Maybe I'm being too pedantic. Maybe that is what you meant. I'm gonna let that one go.
Not scientifically, but by faith, you can show it. And a lot of
No, because by faith, you can show anything, right? You can by faith we can posit that pink universe generating fairies made the universe, and just by faith, that's how I'm going to show it. Then you have competing faiths as competing claims, not both of which are true, demonstrating thereby that faith isn't really a way of knowing things.
a lot of these people in atheist experience and these atheist shows, they never take the time out to explain to you the differences between science that is testable and repeatable, something that is observed, as opposed to something that is backed with the facts. We're talking about pistis. We're not talking about blind faith. Atheists believe there's only one definition for faith because they.
For those, pistis is the Greek word for faith, that's used in the New Testament. So this went a weird direction. I was trying to follow with his logic there. He he was complaining that for some reason people on the atheist experience are obligated to explain to callers that science is slightly different for repeatable tasks than for repeatable events than for one-time events. I'm not sure why the onus is on the atheist experience hosts to do that. They're typically not scientists. But again, it's your misunderstanding that repeatability is a requirement for scientific knowledge. It is not. Again, making testable predictions is what's important. Very different.
They don't read dictionaries. They don't know this stuff. Okay.
Yes, we are the ones not reading dictionaries. Clearly, you couldn't find the dictionary definition for miracle. I mean, I don't. Anyway, it doesn't matter because theologically, everyone's very different about what they can accept as a miracle, and definitely pulling up a dictionary and telling a Christian that this is prescriptive for what you believe a miracle is counterproductive. If you are a non-believer, do not do that. Ask the Christian or the theist instead what they think a miracle is, and go with that definition. Maybe it's as silly as Gman's.
Not everybody's walking around here believing things blindly. Some of us believe that Jesus Christ existed because of the historical evidence that exists. It ain't just because somebody told us. We walk around.
Well, historical evidence, when it boils down to mere testimony, which is what Jesus is, we have no archaeological evidence for Jesus, right? And archaeological evidence would be coins with his picture on them, or like there's very little archaeological evidence for any historical figure, no matter how important, right? So what we're left with is testimony, the writings of historians who presumably had sources. That is just being told, right? It's being told. The question is, do you trust what's being told? So you are just being told. And it's time for, I guess, the mug. I can't. Oh, forget the mug. I forget that on this show we've got the proper graphic and song.
We're to believe in everything that people told us. That's not how it works.
We've demonstrated a mechanism by which we can confirm supernatural causation.
No, of course not. I mean, I also don't think that it's
then we're stuck. There you go. Yeah. I'm not saying, here's the thing. I'm not saying that that's the case forever. Maybe tomorrow somebody will come up with a way to demonstrate that the supernatural is real and show how it can interact with reality.
And it has already happened. Go watch Dr. Ken Hovind and listen to what he had to say about intelligent design. And he's not the only one. Brother True Empiricism has done it on his channel. I've done it on.
Yeah, if you want to go intelligent design route, that's not your go-to list. There are, let's say, Biologos. There's the whole. I mean, even though they lost in court, I forget what the whole ID movement, like Michael Behe and whatever group he's involved with. Again, lost in court. Intelligent design is not science. But the names you listed are the last you should go to.
My channel, you know what I mean? And other people have done it too, talking about intelligent design. Matt Dillahunty wants you to believe that no one's ever shown them anything. But in reality, what they're doing is that they're playing pretend, like nobody's ever taken the time out to explain this. It's either that or Matt Dillahunty's just too lazy to do research. Remember that little joke they were making in the beginning of this video with doing legwork and doing research? Well, Matt Dillahunty, nor Dragnet or Matt Dillahunty will not actually do the work themselves. And believe me, if there's anybody on this show who have been shown this over and over and over again, is Dragnet. He's been shown this over and over and over again. And he has no refutation for it at all.
How we can test for that and confirm it. But until that happens, we're stuck.
Now, as that relates to the situation with Jesus and the resurrection and all that, I'm a Christian, so I assume probably knew I was going there.
But I mean,
if that was the case.
But well, let me ask you.
The resurrection, this is why I'm here. I don't less about the I know we're kind of an hour and a bit in. Sorry everyone, but we're finally getting to resurrection, which I didn't promise resurrection, but I thought it was coming. And so here we go.
Do you disagree with the conclusion that I reached right there? That until we are able, okay.
I mean, well,
then,
I don't feel comfortable positing a supernatural explanation.
They believe it's something.
Fred Harvey, yes, Discovery Institute. Thank you so much. That is the name I was looking to find. It is, almost 3 a.m. for me, but no excuses. Discovery Institute. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Called scientism. When you're dealing with an atheist, and by the way, they can sit here and deny this to the blue in the face. They could deny this until they become Aquaman. It doesn't make a difference. They believe in something called scientism, and all that is that, and I'll make.
That's a good line. You can deny this until you become Aquaman. That's actually pretty funny. I like it. And yes, Fern, apparently now we are going to have to defend scientism, which I've never met a person who self-labels as with scientism. Scientism is a label only put on you by other people. Well, let's see if Gman defines it, and we'll see if how I understand it is what he understands.
This is as simple as possible so everybody can understand this. They believe that there's only one way to know things, and that is through science.
That's actually not a bad definition of scientism. There's only one way to know a thing, and that's science. And I've actually heard people, and probably someone like myself, who's just, not philosophically sophisticated, make, maybe say, I only trust things that we can know scientifically or things like that, not understanding that what they really mean is philosophically, because the PhD, for example, when you get a PhD, your doctorate in science, that's actually a doctorate in philosophy, because science is a subset of philosophy. Things I didn't know until late in life. But no, there are certain things we don't know scientifically. For example, we can't defend the merits of the scientific method scientifically. We can only merit them philosophically. So there are other ways to come to know things or come to think things are beneficial. For example, that our preference to survive versus not survive, for example, is not a scientific position, right? That's a philosophical position or a epistemological position. So, yeah, don't adopt scientism. Now, science is the best way that we are able to know things about the natural world. That's a better statement. We'll see where he goes.
I am dead serious. They believe that the only way you can know things is through science. Some of them are so addicted to their science that they'll argue that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. I will show you the clips of this in the future, ladies and gents, where they're arguing that 1 + 1 doesn't even equal 2. If you was around,
I've never heard anyone argue that. Unless, so I kind of know the circles that, so Gman, like a decade ago or whatever, used to run around when there was a thing called Google Plus. I think that's what it was called. They had their own group chat, Discord style get together hangout place that you could go and do things. And things got pretty pedantic in there. I didn't really love. Night, Drew. Thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate. Things got pretty pedantic in there, so I can imagine that people would have argued that 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2, and their answer to that was, well, what if you're not using base 10? What if you're in a binary numbering system where 1 + 1 is actually equal to 10, for example, right? Or I've seen them argue in that particular group that is 1 + 1 is 10, right? In binary, right? I don't know. It's late. I've also seen, the argument whether 0.999 repeating is equal to 1. And of course, there are mathematical proofs that you can demonstrate that 9.999 repeating is equal to 1. And so then you would be able to say 0.999 repeating plus 0.999 repeating maybe isn't equal to, I don't know, there may have been weird math tricks involved. I don't trust that Gman was hearing these arguments correctly. That's maybe uncharitable of me, but at this point, I don't necessarily trust it. Get Good Gabriel, thank you so much for this $5 super chat. This guy is pretending he believes in Jesus because of science and history, and he's accusing atheists of scientism. Yes, that is correct. Although he agrees, Gman does agree that he has a he wants to say that faith is trust and that faith is well-placed trust, but he also wants to agree that faith is the gap between the amount of evidence you have and proof, or whatever would be convincing proof to you, and that there is a gap there and that gap gets filled with faith. Perhaps he will clarify for us how he can hold both of those positions at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, but would be said 1-0. Yes, it would be said 1-0. It wouldn't be said 10. Correct. Thank you. Yeah, it would be said 1-0. You're right. Again, that harkens back to the question about 1 + 1 in binary.
During the great debate days, you already know what I'm going to show you when those videos come out.
If the person who died and rose again was like, okay, I'm going to die and rise again, and then they did it, and they said God is the mechanism by which this took place, I would actually feel, comfortable taking their word for it. But
see, that's actually a huge mistake, because if I told you that I could levitate in front of you, and then I did it, and then I told you the reason I was able to levitate is because I am in fact God, and you're comfortable just accepting that, you would turn out to be wrong.
Not levitation. I mean, if you were like demonstrably dead, though, like if I witnessed you be killed.
Weird. So a person's attribution about for some reason, the raised from the dead miracle, you can't be wrong about your attribution, but other miracles you could definitely be lying about. Weird and arbitrary. Also, there were in the Bible, there were plenty of people besides Jesus who were raised from the dead. There was all the Jerusalem zombies, for example, who were raised after Jesus died. We don't know. No one interviewed them that we have recorded, so we don't know what they were attributing. But they may well not have even known what the reason was they were raised from the dead. Presumably, they're not up on current events from their grave. They may not know. They may have come up with an attribution. Hey, we're all alive because, something else. I don't understand. I don't see why a raised person that we get to affirm from them anything more than that they are raised. Why they are raised, still an open question. Matt makes a good point.
Public execution.
Okay, sure.
And then risen from the dead, that'd be a little bit different. Would you agree?
It would be different, but I wouldn't necessarily accept their claim about it, because
beer 2, beer 3. Yep. You remind me, Michael. I'm going to pour myself another.
That's not confirmation. That's still just a claim. The question I have, though, is you're a Christian. And so,
yes.
And so on some level, you are accepting a claim that somebody died, resurrected, and gave credit to God when you don't have any evidence that any of that actually happened.
That's not true. And that is really being intellectually dishonest. We have over 500 eyewitnesses. We have the apostles. We have.
Hold on one sec. All right. No. I had to mute you there for a second while this can of Coke Zero. I cracked it because for some reason I didn't want that on the stream. Okay. Gman just said, that's not true. We have 500 witnesses. No, we don't. We don't. In 1 Corinthians 15, Paul is reciting some kind of, they call it a creed, some kind of thing that he learned from other people. He doesn't have first-hand knowledge of this, but he says, yes, and that Jesus appeared to 500. That is Paul repeating a claim that there were 500 people. At best, that is third-hand information, at best. We don't know the names of any of these 500 people. Not a single one of them deigned to be interviewed or recorded for posterity that we could know what they saw. No, we do not have 500 witnesses. Loud for people in the back. We do not have 500 witnesses of risen Jesus. We have a story about 500 witnesses. Do we have the direct words of the person who told that story? No. We have someone repeating a story about 500 witnesses. If you are the kind of person who thinks that a repeated story about 500 is the same as having 500, then I don't know what to tell you. You're going to believe a lot of false things.
History. As a matter of fact, Simon Greenleaf, who happened to be a scientist, put the resurrection to the test and came out to the conclusion, and you can go all look it up, because to this very day, they have had to eat this crow, and we have not been wrong about this. Simon Greenleaf, an atheist scientist, put the resurrection to the test. And
no. So, I'm sorry that I may have interrupted. So, Gman, I'm just gonna just 1 second here. Gman just referenced a gentleman named Simon Greenleaf. Now, the last time I covered Gman, he specifically was talking exclusively about the resurrection, and he brought up this gentleman named Simon Greenleaf, who I had not heard of. So we looked him up and we watched some videos about his claims. As you can see on screen here, I know the print might be a little small for you. Let me see if I can make that bigger. He lived from 1783 to 1853. So we're talking about someone who lived right around the same time as Charles Darwin. Born a little bit before. Simon Greenleaf was not a scientist. G-Man has now forgotten, because in the last video, he at least remembered well enough to remember that Simon Greenleaf was a lawyer. And that's why, as a lawyer, it actually made some semblance of difference whether the commitment of the evidence made a difference for him. At least that's the theoretical idea. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter if you are Lee Strobel and you are an investigative reporter who investigated Christianity and you found it to be true, or you are J. Warner Wallace and you were a cold case detective and you use those cold case detective skills to determine that, hey, Christianity must be true. This is good evidence. These are all just the testimonies of people who want us to feel like their opinion should matter for some reason, because they are theoretically intelligent in an unrelated field. Now, I'm not saying that Simon Greenleaf wasn't a super smart lawyer. Is my understanding that he was. I forget what the claims were. What were some of his contributions? He was at Harvard Law School. He was I guess he was one of the founders at Harvard Law School or something like that. Whatever. But best known for his Christian apologetics, not for his law career. Much similar to your Lee Strobels and your J. Warner Wallaces, but hundreds of years earlier. Am I impressed that a lawyer from hundreds of years ago, before we had source criticism, before many of the current manuscripts that we have of the New Testament were found, before we had textual criticism, before a lot of the Bible scholarship that is just routine at this point, that this guy had no access to any significant number of books, probably. Like these were just not times when you can research to the level where we were. Am I supposed to take this on board that, wow, a lawyer from 1800s found this compelling, so what am I doing with my life? Now, if he had good arguments, tell us what his arguments were. The best that he had last video was that Simon Greenleaf just declared that the resurrection would stand up in court. Now, maybe it would have stood up in a 1783 court. I don't know. Maybe it would have. It wouldn't stand up in court today. Absolutely not. In fact, I'm currently working on the video I'm working on right now. Is J. Warner Wallace discussing with Sean McDowell how the resurrection would not hold up in court today because of the rules in North American courts. So no. This appeal to just authority, maybe that works for Christians because Christians love authority. But no, anyway, this if G-Man or anyone ever pulls out a Simon Greenleaf on you, you should be less impressed than you were without knowing who it was.
He came to the conclusion that the resurrection is about as historic as any other event that's happened in history. And I'm going to tell you something else, too. One of the...
Yeah, not a historian. He was a lawyer. Now, that's fine, because I also have opinions about the historical veracity of things. We all do. It's all good. But if you want me to be super impressed, find me the historian who didn't believe in Jesus' resurrections and then through the tools of history decided that the resurrection was a historical event. Bart Ehrman has challenged Mike Licona to provide that list. I know people have asked Gary Habermas to provide these lists. So far, still waiting. No lists of historians, trained historians, who started out not believing, looked at the historical evidence, and now do. Find me one of those. Then you'd have at least something. I don't think that would be convincing enough, but you'd have something. And a lawyer from 1853, no. We have a super chat. Thank you, Rusty Claymore. Night, Paul. I'll give you and Dave a big fat update next Toast to Toast. Very appreciated. I think we're doing Toast to Toast in roughly a week. Dave is traveling for work right now, so we are anyway. We weren't really scheduled for tonight anyway. Actually, also we don't have a particular topic locked in for the next Toast to Toast. So feel free to leave a comment on the last Toast to Toast if you have a specific Art Bell episode you'd love to see us see. Back to Gman and his miracle claims, resurrection claims.
The things that they get away with on the atheist experience is that they never give the rules of historicity. They
never give the rules of historicity. Okay. First of all, there is no such thing as rules of historicity. So, this is something I have learned that famously there's a whole field called philosophy of history. There are no rules. I was just Googling it. Anyway, Google it yourself. Check it out. There is no general agreement on the rules of history. There's just isn't. Now, that's why actually when we start doing these debates, that oftentimes on the theist side, they will lay out some principles they like to go by, and they're not bad. Like, so for example, an early source, all things being equal, is better than a later source, right? So, yes, Stephanie. Oak Island. That's funny. Where I've been twice, including with Dave. So yeah, the example there earlier, all things being equal, better than later. Okay, that's a rule of thumb. That's a sometimes thing. Some historians will adopt that. Others won't, depending on the specific sub area. There's no rules, right? There's rules of thumb. There are multiple attestation is better than single attestation. Okay, generally, all things being equal, but then you spend a lot of time in the weeds. Are all things being equal? Are these 3 attestations on one side? Are they worth what a single attestation or fewer attestation? For example, if you can tell that they corroborated or collaborated is probably better in this case, though they're similar. Then the fact that there's 3 of them saying the same thing doesn't matter as much, right? Because they got together up front and got their story straight first, and then 3 of them said in unison the same thing. That doesn't mean they're correct. So, G-Man, tell me what you think the rules of history are. I'd love to hear it. But if you solve this, you should quit your job and get into history, because you have solved a conundrum that historians don't agree on right now.
tell you what you actually need to prove that something historically happened. Because if you actually take Matt Dillahunty's
that's just not even a thing. You don't prove that something historically happened. You don't even prove, for example, that Donald Trump was the 45th president, right? Like, I think he was the 45th, whatever. He was the previous president before Joe Biden. You don't prove that historically. You measure probabilities. Now that probability is, up in the 99 point whatever percentile, because it's so well documented. But just proof is the wrong word. That's what I'm saying. Proof is the wrong word, even with modern history.
Argument, where he says that
That's hilarious. Yeah, while I lived in America for a while, I am Canadian, so sometimes the numbering system escapes me because it's not as readily important to my life. We just watch. American politics are more of a spectator sport for the rest of the world, one that sometimes affects us more than it should, but still a spectator sport.
Where he sits there and he says that that this didn't happen in history. I can say his grandmother never existed with the stuff that's coming out of his mouth. I can say his great-great-grandmother never existed. I can say William Shakespeare never existed.
So, no, you couldn't, because you can't say my grandfather didn't exist, because there are no humans without biological grandfathers, right? That's a weird sentence to try and say that your grandfather didn't exist, because if you don't have, at least two biological grandfathers, you couldn't be here. That's just biology. That's not a thing you need to prove through historical method. Now, would you be able to say, hey, you can't prove that? I don't want to give the names of my grandparents, but let's say, let's say my grandpa's name was, I don't know, William Parker. And so, and I say, well, my family history, all my life, people told me that William Parker was my grandfather. So I'm telling you, I got no reason to doubt it. William Parker, boom, my grandpa. He's not a Mennonite name, but that's fine. William Parker. On my I have my birth certificate, which has my parents' names, and then I have their birth certificates, again, which are considered to be public records. These are things that escape hearsay rule in court. But and that they're on one of their birth certificates. Boom, William Parker is the name there. So boom, that's my grandpa. Now, that doesn't prove it. The way you'd prove it would be to through some kind of DNA, right? If you could prove, if you had either access to William Parker's DNA or other siblings or children, descendants of William Parker, and you compare my DNA, you'd be able to. There are literally ways you could prove this scientifically. Historically is not the way you do it. These are weird claims. That's all I'm saying.
I can go out there and say George Washington never existed. You understand what I'm saying? Using the
You could. You absolutely could. You'd have to come up with a reason why all the evidence that we do have for affirming George Washington, both as a human, a human and as a president, but I guess Gman saying didn't exist. There's a lot of independent sources that you'd have to explain away as some kind of very large conspiracy. That would be a very large hurdle. But yeah, you could throw any accusation out there you want. The question is, can you meet? Again, not a burden of proof, but are you are you saying you're going to actually convince anyone of it? You'd have to make a case as to why all the evidence we have for George Washington, which includes photos and descriptions and inscriptions and documents, firsthand documents, all those kind of weird things, you have to say they didn't happen.
Line of argumentation that they use. They're not using historicity properly at all.
Well, tell us how to use historicity properly. That's what we're here to find out.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that there's no evidence that it happened. I mean, there's numerous, like witnesses that testified to it.
No, we have no witnesses that account to it.
Yes, we do. We actually have 500 of them.
No, same objection. No, you have a story of 500. You don't have a single word from any of those 500.
500 eyewitnesses that witnessed Jesus Christ rising from the dead.
Says who? Not them.
And Matt Dillahunty is going to say that the Bible is not evidence. If the Bible is not evidence,
No, Matt will never say that the Bible is not evidence. The Bible, he may say that the Bible is insufficient evidence. He may say that the Bible is unreliable. You know, in fact, I shouldn't go on a limb. Maybe Matt will say that. I won't say. I would not say that the Bible's not evidence, even though I have a "For the Bible Tells Me So" Tumblr that a person can get on my merch store. And that I laugh when someone uses the Bible as a single source for their claim. I don't laugh, but it's not acceptable for me. I understand that the Bible is Protestant Bible is 66 books, and that there's lots of nuance. Whether certain things are multiply tested or not, and that's why I get into those weeds. But anyway, let's see what Gman wants to fill this in.
and you can't use a biology book to teach people about science. It's stupid. It's
No, that's not the same. Comparing the Bible to a science book is nowhere the same, because there's not a, I shouldn't say there's not a single. Widely accepted and used science textbooks are never the originator of a claim. There's no accepted scientific principle that makes its debut in a grade school textbook. Grade school textbooks, or even university level textbooks, reflect a body of science, reflect work by thousands of people who have come to conclusions for reasons that are published in peer-reviewed journals. All these kind of things. What is or is not in a science textbook is not the basis by which we tell a child Mercury is the planet closest to the sun because the textbook said so. That's not what we do. We because the textbook said so. It wouldn't be a funny joke if I made a Tumblr that said, "For the textbook tells me so," because no one's wrote a song in earnest and taught children a song that repeats in their memory that "for the textbook tells me so" is a reason to accept something is true. Right? These are not analogous. The Bible is the originating source for some of these claims, like this 500 witnesses you think that you have. We can't go to other sources before that because we don't have them. So the Bible is the originator of that, which is not what the textbooks are. I don't know why things need to be explained, but okay, we're staying up late to do it.
really, really stupid. Okay? Yes, the Bible says that so-and-so saw Jesus Christ rise from the dead. We got historians that talk about the Christians who believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead.
Christians believing that something happened is irrelevant. I think you would acknowledge that when you say all the Mormons believe X happened, or all the Muslims believe Y happened, or all the Buddhists believe X happened, whatever, the number of people who believe it is unrelated to whether the claim is true. Those are not, they don't correlate. So you putting up that Christians believe, I believe that Christians believe that Jesus rose from the dead. Yeah, that's what Christians believe. The question is, do you have any Christians who saw it? Do you have any first-hand accounts? Even that, we'd have to talk about eyewitness testimony and all that kind of stuff, but we can't even get there. Do you have a single person telling us that they saw risen Jesus? The answer is no, with that little asterisk of the Apostle Paul, who claims to have seen risen Jesus, but obviously didn't see the body in the same sense that is claimed, right? Because Jesus saw it years after Jesus was allegedly went to heaven. So whatever he saw wasn't the resurrection body, it was something else. So no, you have no firsthand accounts.
And he says that's not evidence. But I'm supposed to believe that.
He didn't say it wasn't evidence. He's saying it's not testimony. It's not firsthand accounts. It's terrible evidence, but it's still evidence, right? Not evidence that you accept in court because of hearsay. It's that bad.
Some dude by the name of what's his name? Charles Darwin got on a boat and actually went to these islands and studied these animals and popularized the theory of evolution.
Yes. Are you saying that is an analogous historical claim that you should doubt? I mean, fine, go ahead. I don't know to what level, to what extent we have evidence that Charles Darwin was on the Beagle. It's my understanding that it's not just his writings, that there are people who have recorded about him being on the Beagle. But it actually makes absolutely no difference to the veracity, the truth of the theory of evolution, whether Charles Darwin was completely exposed to be a fraud, and that we found out tomorrow that he never left his apartment, and that all the Finch sketches were purely from his head, even though they actually miraculously, that's a weird word to use here, given this earlier, they somehow so very surprisingly match what future scientists also have seen in the Galapagos. Doesn't matter, he made them up, he invented them. Everything that he ever said was, again, not from firsthand experience, but entirely from his apartment. All debunked. Yeah, no one would care, because the veracity of evolution does not hang one iota on what Charles Darwin thought or taught. Even Gman understood that Darwin didn't originate the evolutionary ideas, but he was a popularizer. So that's much like if you debunk Paulogia on my claims about some aspect of study of New Testament, for example. Guess what? Me, Paulogia, I've not discovered anything new about the New Testament that isn't already in scholarship, right? I'm not coming up with new stuff. I've come up with some interesting observations that I've combined some observations in unique ways, again, that help popularize what some of the scholarship is. But debunking me and discrediting me, and proving that I never read the Bible or memorized the Bible, or you could discredit that all day. That doesn't affect the ideas. So again, a little bit weird. Aaron Colson, $5 super chat. Darwin, I'm on a boat. I'm on a boat, bitch. Or perhaps not. Or perhaps not. You made me say a curse word on my channel with your super chat. So well done, Aaron. You've got your wish. You've caught me in a weakened state, and I just went ahead and said it.
Give me a break. Come on.
So Paul is not a witness to the resurrection?
Of course not. Paul didn't know anything about Jesus until after Jesus was already dead.
So if something
See, here's the thing with Matt Dillahunty. Matt Dillahunty, I think he does suffer from some brain trauma, or this is just proof that he never read his Bible. So according to this man, the Apostle Paul didn't know anything about Jesus until after he was dead. Let's give you a couple of facts.
Hold on. I cannot wait to hear these facts, because no, Paul never says he knew Jesus. You'd think he would bring that up if he did. No one else claimed that Paul knew Jesus. Again, you'd think someone would bring that up. We have no one thinks if Gman has evidence to the contrary, this is going to be a first for me. No one thinks that Paul and Jesus met while Jesus was alive. So lay it on me.
About the Apostle Paul. First of all, his name wasn't always Paul. His name was Saul. He was of the tribe of Benjamin.
Hold on. We don't know that. So that is a common trope in Christianity, and I held to that as well. I've come to learn now that that's not necessarily widely held in scholarship. It is, we know that a lot of the disciples, right, had different names in different contexts. So, for example, Peter and Cephas and Simon Peter and Simon, the Bible has at least those names for him, right? And in Greek, it's more. Petros, I think his name. I forget. For rock. But Cephas is also rock. They think that probably Paul went by Paul when he was in Roman Greek company, and Paul went by Saul when he was in Hebraic company. That just kind of actually makes some sense. So, yeah, completely irrelevant to the question about whether Paul knew Jesus. G-Man's pointing out for some reason that Paul may have gone by two different names, whether they were sequential or at the same time. Weird. Yes. Get Gable. His real name was of Tarsus, of course, yes. And of the tribe of Benjamin, we don't know if he was if he was indeed a Pharisee. I forget if, remind me in the chat. It's a little bit late. Was Paul a Levite? I guess he would have been. As a Pharisee, do you have to be a Levite? I forget how that works. In which case, I don't think he's from the tribe of Benjamin. That I could all be wrong about because I don't remember off the top of my head.
Which means he was a Jew, and he actually knew that Jesus walked the earth. That's number one.
He was, yes, he was Jewish. I'm not going to try and pretend that the Apostle Paul wasn't Jewish. And yes, the Apostle Paul was aware that Jesus walked the earth, but you have no evidence that that Paul was aware that Jesus walked the earth while Jesus was walking the earth. That's just a thing he knew about Jesus after he died, because Jesus had no impact on Paul's life before he died. Sorry, that's just the way it goes.
Number one. Number two, he also knew Jesus was crucified. Number three, the apostle.
By definition, you cannot know that someone was crucified while they were alive. If you know that someone is crucified, that is a fact that you cannot know while they're alive, because it should be self-evident, right? Until the point in which you die, you are not crucified in that sense. So that's hilarious. That's weird. Stephanie Holmes. Paul was a Pharisee. Thank you. You don't have to be a Levite to be of that sect. Thank you. I thought I was remembering that correctly, but I wasn't completely sure. I don't recall. Thank you for that clarification. A sanity check. Appreciate that. I don't remember where the claim that Paul was from the tribe of Benjamin's from. I'm not sure if that's from Acts. If so, it's dubious. There's also all the fake letters of Paul. So many places things can be.
Paul had an encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus, and Jesus was the one that appointed him as being a
G-Man. Let's say that the road to Damascus thing happened. That was after Jesus died. You're trying to give us evidence that Paul knew about Jesus before he died. The road to Damascus is after. Everything, the crucifixion, after. That he walked the earth, ambiguous. You got to have something better.
an apostle. Matt Dillahunty, get off the drugs.
Get off the drugs? Where's the evidence?
If a being, right, just like appeared in the sky, right, and blinded you, okay, if that was the case, hypothetically, and then this being communicated with you and said,
Now, why not Dillahunty refute his own atheist arguments? Okay, he's saying that the Apostle Paul was made blind by Jesus is proof that the person speaking to him was Jesus. Watch how Matt Dillahunty is so pig-headed. He starts arguing against how we go about knowing things. Just watch this for a moment.
I'm excited to see. I really don't think that Matt will say that Jesus was blinded. That will surprise me. If Matt says that, okay.
Jesus and reason from the dead, all these things, you'd be like, no, I don't.
He's going to question the reliability of the Apostle Paul, right? Let's just hear this for a second.
I mean, that's fair. We can all question reliability. Is it crazy to question anyone's reliability, even a follower of Jesus? Okay.
No. See, this is the thing that you're missing out on. If that happened to me, if some being appeared to me,
if some being, that would be God, appeared to him.
No, if some being, it doesn't have to be God. If some being appeared before me, could be a raccoon, right? Could be an alien. Matt deliberately said a being. Not every being that could potentially appear to me is God, right? Demons, right? Even Gman, you would agree angels and demons could theoretically, corporeally appear for me because they have for other people. Those aren't God. So stop being weird.
Let's go on.
Then I might maybe have good reason to believe it. But
what? Yeah, Matt just said I might have reason. You're going to have a problem with him saying he might, admitting that he might have reason to believe if God appeared for him? That's a problem?
He might have good reason if a being showed up in person and actually said, I'm God. He might.
Well, Matt didn't actually say that the person had to say that I'm God. That was actually not in that category. So thanks for adding your own extra bit in there. But no, G-Man, are you saying it's impossible that Lucifer, Satan, Morning Star, all those names, that it would be impossible for Satan to appear before me and for Satan to say, I am God? Why is that impossible? Should I not consider that as a possibility for at least a fraction of a second? You're being incredulous because Matt is just saying that I would take a second to think about it and to maybe weigh if there's some evidence. That boggles the mind that's your level of being incensed.
I believe that's true. Now let's look at this in contrast here. Let me get this straight here. I'm supposed to believe that Charles Darwin went to these islands to popularize evolution. I wasn't born during that time.
Okay, so he didn't go there to do that. He went there on an assignment that is my understanding. He was a naturalist. He was hired as a naturalist, trained as in theology, weirdly, and was kind of on this boat because the guy couldn't get a real job, is my understanding, roughly. So he didn't go there to popularize evolution. Not a thing he went there to do. But guess what? I don't care. G-Man, don't believe it. Don't believe that Darwin got on a boat. Assume that Darwin maybe didn't exist, or if he did exist, he never left his house. Neat. Fine. Nothing that I wish you would believe hinges on whether Charles Darwin left his house.
Never saw the man. I'm supposed to believe that I'm related to every living organism on this planet and non-living organism on this planet, like popcorn and jelly beans, turtles, cold-blooded animals, which there is no scientific evidence to support that whatsoever, right?
Wait. There's no scientific evidence that there's cold-blooded animals? Is that what I... Cold-blooded animals, there's no... I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt to say that he meant to say that there's no scientific evidence that we're related to cold-blooded animals. Presumably Gman accepts the existence of cold-blooded animals. Don't know. Anyway, not jelly beans. Again, we are only related to things that are alive. That's the way that goes. But none of the reasons that I would give you or a science educator would give you to accept the common descent. You don't even have to believe evolution. You can just believe in common descent, because there's some Christians who believe in just bits and pieces of it. So fine. The common descent part, nothing to do with Charles Darwin. Guess what? Charles Darwin didn't know about genetics, because that part wasn't discovered till well after he'd passed. So Charles Darwin didn't understand any of the genetic evidence that we would give you today for common descent. It's not that he wouldn't have understood it, but it just didn't exist. So no, we don't care what you believe about Charles Darwin. We want to know about the scientific evidence and the conclusions that they draw.
I'm supposed to believe that. He can't prove it scientifically to me. The person sitting next to him can't prove it.
The fact that we can't prove it to you does not speak to the veracity of whether it's true. Just the same way that you cannot convince me, or I shouldn't say cannot, no one has yet to convince me that the Christian God exists. That holds the fact that I am not convinced holds no bearing on whether, in fact, the Christian God does exist, right? That's not a data point.
That scientifically to me, right? I'm supposed to believe that, right? But if God...
Ideally. But if you don't, carry on.
Showed up and came right to your face and he said that I'm God. Remember what I said?
No, you're begging the question. You're saying if God shows up and says I'm God, you don't believe it. And actually, fine, maybe that is actually would be the case. But any being could show up and say that they're God. So we need some kind of other way of determining whether that being is telling the truth or not, right? Star Trek 5. G-Man, you like Star Trek, I think. Go watch Star Trek 5, where I think it was Spock's brother. Boy, I haven't seen it in a long time. Spoilers for Star Trek 5, which is not a good movie. Spock's brother is being used by beings that he thinks are God. And there's the famous line, Kirk finally figures it out, well, what does God need with a starship? Right? We figured it out that, oh, well, these beings are very powerful and they are creating tricks, but they're not actually, all-powerful deities. You should at least have that level of skepticism if someone comes up to you and says they're God. Otherwise, I could come up to you and say that I'm God, and by this same, unless you have other criteria, you would just have to accept me at my word. And I'm not God, just for the record.
My video that if God came down from heaven and held a dead star in his hand, they still wouldn't believe. You remember when I said that?
No, that's not. Well, I mean, that'd be weird. If God came down and was holding a star in his hand, well, I don't know at what scale I as a human could know that God was holding a star. Like, are you putting me so far back that the star is within my field of vision? In which case, or has God shrunk this star? In which case, how do I know it's a star and not an LED light? That's a weird hypothetical. I don't know why that would be more or less impressive. Oh, well, that makes me sad. But actually, I think I knew that was correct. He likes wrestling. He likes Star Wars. He likes Marvel stuff. Maybe he likes DC more than Marvel. I don't remember. Maybe we have a lot in common. Although I never cared for wrestling. We have a super chat. I'm going to interrupt my stream of thought for a super chat. Aaron Colson writes, I've eaten some shrooms and saw some things. Quite sure those things I saw were not true. Exactly, yes. Especially if you might be on a hallucinogen of some sort. You should definitely not be accepting anything that just appears to you and says, I'm God. I'm presuming that Gman is not actively knowingly at least participating in such things. But even though I myself am not actively engaged in hallucinogens, I would have to, at least for a second, wonder, hey, did someone slip me something somewhere, right? Is that not a reasonable thing to think and to ask? Seems like it should be.
Not exaggerating when I said that. So God can't even show up to this man.
God can show up to this man, but Matt is not going to accept it. Or let me put I don't know what Matt would accept. I'm not going to accept it in the first instance and just give up all questions. I am going to want to know. I'm going to try and corroborate this later. Ideally, if God is interacting with something else, like maybe if he seems to be standing on the ground, I will check for footprints later, or perhaps for some level of radiation or lights. I will whip out my phone and try and take pictures. I will ask this all-knowing being questions of things that I know that I don't know, right? Great, wonderful example would be if I happen to remember off the top of my head some math problems that are currently unsolved by any human. If I could ask God for the answers to one of those questions, and God would know it, if I set it forth, I am not qualified to solve any of these problems, nor smart enough, nor talented enough in the area of math to solve those problems. So if I suddenly dropped on YouTube and said, hey, God just told me the answer to this unsolvable math problem is boom, that should probably be good evidence, right? For people that, oh, maybe you did speak to at least something that knows things that humans don't know. But it wouldn't have to be as elaborate as that. God, I know what I know. So God could give me information that I just know I don't have. and verify that way. Like there's lots of ways that you could verify. I could ask, or I could, hey God, ask, and I could pick a random human on the planet. God Santa, you always pose the answer to math problems. I feel like that leaves the door open to smart aliens. It absolutely does, and I think I just qualified that. Although before you type that question, I may not have. It absolutely does leave it open to smart aliens, but it does that. So the other thing would be the other potential thing would be like, hey, God, ask. I could ask for a natural miracle to happen, something verifiable, right? Like, there's a tree beside me. Please turn all the leaves into glass or into some chemical compound that is very difficult that we don't have around here. Please, please turn this whole tree to some kind of alchemy stuff. Or you could ask God I could pick a random human that I don't know. Hey, how about if you have Keanu Reeves give me a call right now? I've never met Keanu Reeves. As far as I know, Keanu Reeves doesn't know who I am. So if in the next 30 seconds you could have Keanu Reeves give me a call on my cell phone, again, that'd be pretty good. That'd be a good one. All kinds of things, right? All kinds of imaginative ways that we could affirm that this person, this entity knows things that I don't have. Or I have physical scars, right? There's effects on my body from my cancer. I have some artificial parts in my body right now. There's things like that. So I could actually also then just say, hey, God, no one has ever had, artificial tendons become natural tendons. Maybe you could just do that for me. You could heal my body in those ways, and then I can go to the doctor and I could verify, hey, look, no other human has had synthetic parts turn into natural ones. Boom. Like that'd be a pretty big deal. There's lots of good things that God could do. But showing up and saying I'm God, that's not the pinnacle. That's all we're saying.
Look him face to face and says, I'm God. And he still wouldn't believe. But we're supposed to believe that Charles Darwin existed and that he sailed all these different islands.
Why are you on about Charles Darwin? Whether Charles Darwin, do you think that there's bad evidence for Charles Darwin? I mean, I guess less than the fact that there is a being in front of you. We're not saying we would deny that there was a being in front of us, although we might consider hallucinations. But if there was some kind of physical interaction, again, hallucinations can be multimodal. Who knows? But this is so weird. Yeah, G-Man, just stop believing in Charles Darwin. Your life won't change a bit. Become a Charles Darwin mythicist. Go for it. That affects absolutely nothing. Fred Harvey for $5, Australian dollars. I must disagree with you, Paul. I still think Low Bar Bill is YouTube's worst apologist. I will disagree. I think that William Lane Craig, while he comes to some of the same conclusions, has demonstrated that he is willing to accept new information over time. And he also is often cited as someone who has influenced people. And that needs to be a part of it. Correct conclusions would be one part of it. Correct methodology and epistemology another. And by correct, I mean, that's obviously spectrum, better than not. But also some level of influence, right? So I'm unaware of any human that has become a Christian or had their faith strengthened, or had converted to Christianity, any of that kind of stuff, because of anything G-Man has said. Whereas, at least I've heard people claim that William Lane Craig has done that for them. Now, it makes me sad when people say that William Lane Craig has done that for them. Same as it makes me sad, when Lee Strobel, someone says Lee Strobel helped change your mind, or William Lane Craig, or Capturing Christianity, or Inspiring Philosophy. It doesn't matter who, because I'm, suspect. I shouldn't put all those names in the same hat, but they all do make me, to some level, sad that a popularizer has that effect. I'm sure they would say the same thing when someone says, hey, Paulogia helped me leave my faith. They would probably say, oh man, that makes me sad. Paulogia is not that smart. Why did he help? Anyway. Boy, we've been streaming for a while. Off we go. We're still going. It's only 4 a.m. for me, so we're good.
And he studied the theory of evolution. He found out that we share common ancestors with birds, and we share common ancestors with turtles, and creepy crawly things that go bump in the night.
None of those, all those things are alive, so you did better than your jelly bean example. Improvement? Accidental, maybe? I don't know.
Really? Come on now.
Nobody else would, because revelation is necessarily first person, according by Hume, and to everybody else it's hearsay. But you're not just going on secondhand accounts. You're accepting a story for which you can verify none of the details, including whether or not.
That is not true. Again, there were 500 other eyewitnesses.
No, that's what Matt's saying. You cannot confirm that there were 500 witnesses. That is not a thing you can confirm. We have to accept a third-hand claim that there were 500 witnesses. Sorry, G-Man, I don't think you know what confirm means.
Tell me this, Matt Dillahunty. How many witnesses do you have that Charles Darwin went to those islands? Why does it matter, G-Man? It matters a lot. You believe it. How many witnesses?
Yeah, very few, because it's an incredibly mundane claim. There's also, again, he literally had a notebook where he would draw maps and sketch things that sketch birds he was seeing, and if he wasn't on that island, then he had some other mechanism for drawing things, and it wasn't photos, presumably, that were on that island, right? So that's at least evidence that he was there. It's some level of evidence. Whether it's convincing to you, G-Man, I don't know. I don't know what's going to convince you about evolution, but this is weird.
Witnesses do you have? You have zero using the same argumentation against him.
Not the person who's relating the story, you even have an accurate description from them of their account.
Would you only be willing to believe a miracle, like on the testimony of another, if the person was alive, or would you be willing to accept?
I wouldn't believe a miracle on testimony. I wouldn't.
That's the clip. That's the whole thing we need. I didn't know I was coming. Perfect. Yeah, no, we don't. A miracle, testimony evidence alone will never be sufficient to convince me of a miracle. You will need testimony plus some other corroboration. As Matt said, it doesn't matter whether the witness is alive. It doesn't matter if it's one of my children, who are the people I trust most in the world, or my partner, or my parents. All people I trust to tell me the truth. Because testimony, it is always more likely that testimony will be lying. In the case of the people I listed, I don't know why they would lie to me, but that's fine. They could still be. It could be, maybe they think it's for my good, whatever. Lying or mistaken. It's always on the table that people are mistaken about what they're talking about. And people are mistaken every day. Probably each person is mistaken every day. Not necessarily, but probably close. We're probably close to being mistaken about 365 things a year. Seems like a good arbitrary number. That's, 365, 3,650 billion times people are wrong a year. I know it's like more like 8 million people. I don't remember. 8 billion people. Anyway, whatever the number is. Testimony alone, that's just the point. Testimony alone will never be sufficient for someone like me to believe. I understand that, hey, credulous people are okay accepting things on testimony. That's up to you. That's even, maybe it's not even up to you, because you don't choose what convinces you. Perhaps you've had experiences in your life that you think are supernatural, and this would be just another thing that's consistent with your supernatural claims. Fine. These are, again, things I don't know. Not consistent with my worldview. Whatever. That's the point. Where's my thing? We're a couple hours into the stream, almost 2.5 hours into the stream. We got to the point. Testimony alone, not sufficient.
Believe a miracle on testimony. I would believe that.
By the way, guys, you heard that? You heard that? And this is for every atheist that watches this that tells me you're a former Christian. This man just told on himself. Check this out. He wouldn't believe a testimony. He wouldn't believe a miracle on testimony. How many of you know that Matt Dillahunty claims he went to seminary and he was a Christian at one point in his life? Do you know?
Okay. Gman, I'm going to speak for Matt. I'm one of those people who says I was a former Christian. I am a former Christian. I used to believe in all kinds of things based on testimony or less. Based purely on authority. Not even testimony. Just an authoritative structure that was built up in the church. That was enough for me to believe. I used to believe things for bad reasons. That doesn't mean I still believe things for bad reasons. I guess if you're the kind of person who thinks that new information makes you a loser or stupid or something like that, then you're, I don't know, then it's stuck. But my dog is barking, and that's what's distracting me. I am going to put on the be right back screen. I'm going to let my dog have a quick get outside, because I'm the only one home, and we will be right back. Talks amongst yourselves. I was muted. That's funny. I put on the just waiting the be right back screen, and the number of viewers went up. So maybe, apparently, the be right back screen makes people more excited than actual live stream. That's kind of fun. We had at least one super chat come in. So it's 4 a.m. here, and I let my dog out, and unfortunately she likes to bark, and so I was having to deal with, like, hopefully not waking the neighbors. It was a whole thing. Sorry it took so long, but we're back. Aaron Colson, thank you for the $10 super chat. I had sepsis, the genesis of my atheism. The experience convinced me that experts are important. Magical thinking almost killed me because they thought I was having a divine experience. Wow, that is a scary story, and I am glad, so glad that you escaped magical thinking and finally found your way to experts. That's great news. Hopefully, let me know in the chat if I missed any other super chats. I'm just skimming through. I think we got them all. So back to a few more minutes of Gman. And yeah, well, I think I want to try and get through one caller. That was my goal. So we'll see if we can get through one call.
What you got to believe as a Christian, you got to believe that Jesus rose from the dead. You have to believe in his miracles. You have to believe that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and that he's not dead, that he's sitting at the right hand of the Father. Clearly, this man never believed none of those things.
Well, no, because it's possible to believe things and then stop believing them, or to, understand that, like, so for example, when people become Christians, they stop believing, for example, that a lot of times G-Man, I've heard you acknowledge, you stop believing in some of the magical powers of crystals, or that horoscopes give you true information. Like, there are things that people change the reason why they believe things. And even in your experience, that people can stop believing things for whatever reason and have new reasons to believe things. So this is, I don't even understand what level of complaint this is.
And I don't know what the heck they taught this man at seminary. This guy's full of caca, I'm telling you.
At seminary, they taught him to believe based on the evidence of testimony. Absolutely. And I'm sure Matt did, if he called himself a Christian, which he says he did. And I do, so no big deal.
Somebody
So
is.
you would have to say.
Can I finish?
Oh yeah, sure.
I would believe that someone is accurately trying to tell me what happened, but that doesn't mean I should believe their explanation for what happened. And that's a firsthand account.
Exactly.
Do you believe people are being abducted by aliens?
No.
Okay, but you realize that there are people you can talk to right now.
Oh, it all comes back to aliens, for those of you who watched my 3-body problem video this week. Yep. With Mike Lacona's various alien examples that he thought were good examples. Anyway.
Who will tell you.
The alien thing is a really interesting topic here. That's very interesting that an evolutionist wouldn't believe in the theory of evolution. Very interesting that a lot of them wouldn't believe in the theory because of what they believe about abiogenesis, and what they're saying is that can only happen on Earth. See, many of the
No one I've never met anyone who says that abiogenesis, in a way that a materialist would, that it can only happen on Earth. Perhaps G-Man is misremembering the weird Dawkins gotcha moment on the Expelled movie. Is it Expelled? I think. Where in an interview they asked Dawkins to try to make intelligent design make sense, and he said, well, I guess if aliens were the designers, that might make sense, but that doesn't mean that that was a weird question that probably shouldn't have even been answered. No, There's no materialist thinks that if abiogenesis is a chemical process that can happen, that it can only happen on Earth. No, we would readily accept that abiogenesis, if it can happen here, it can happen elsewhere too.
Atheists who actually have a little bit of intelligence will actually say, well, since I believe in the theory of evolution, I believe in abiogenesis, and clearly this could have happened on Mars, could have happened on Pluto, it could have happened on Neptune, or any of the various different planets.
Yes.
But nope, not Matt Dillahunty. Once you get drunk with the denial, with denying, and
Matt didn't. So first of all, Matt hasn't said anything at all about abiogenesis in this call, unless I'm mistaken. I don't think that came up, except for in your weird side commentary. So you don't get to let your side commentary dictate what Matt believes, as much as you might want to.
denying and denying and denying and being a denialist like Matt Dillahunty, man, there's no stopping him with that.
Their alien abduction story. That's not supernatural. Yeah. It's not a miracle. And yet you're willing to discount their personal testimony. And yet you will accept a copy of a translation of a copy from somebody who you don't know, can't investigate at all.
That's not my favorite. When someone's addressing a Christian and they talk about copies of translations of copies, at no point do we do second anymore. Let me preface that maybe in early days, maybe, but no modern translation of the Bible is not directly from the original languages, Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, straight to the final language. Let's just use English for simplicity in our case. All of the English translations are directly Greek to English, Hebrew to English, Aramaic to English. There's no stops on the way. They don't go Greek to French to English, right? Like there's no translation there. So when you say copies of translations of copies, that's just not factually correct when it comes to the Bible. Now, if I want to give Matt the benefit of the doubt here and steelman him, Jesus didn't speak Greek. Or if he did, he was certainly not giving all those sermons in Greek, because it's just not the way it was. So whoever wrote the Gospels would have had to have translate Jesus's Aramaic speaking into Greek first. So there was a translation up front, but all of the scribal work is just copies of copies. There's no translation in the middle there. If you're an atheist or a skeptic or whatever, please don't randomly throw a translation of a copy in there, because that, again, just like that's almost like when Gman says jelly beans, right? For one of his examples of what we're related to. The Christian other side kind of stops listening because they don't think you're serious if you throw that translation part. No, it's just, sorry, Stephen Weber, it's not bad. It's not translations of copies then. It's copies of translations. Like translations need to be at your final destination there, right? We're copying translation. We have copies of a translation. And there was another question in here. The Merlin. Is it like 3 a.m. for me? It is 4:14 where I live. So that's late or early. And apparently I haven't even taken the time to understand G-Man's point here. It's over my head. That's possible. I just might be too dumb to understand.
All you're willing to accept that.
Wait. Again, Matt Dillahunty's making the ignorant argument that only one person wrote the Bible. Only one person, right? And then
no, and G-Man, I'm going to get back to that. But wasn't it translated into Latin from the originals and then from Latin into the Western languages? Yes, early on. So absolutely, there would have been in early centuries that people were translating from translations. Absolutely. But there's no modern translation, including Unless someone can correct me, but I think that everything in the King James Version, I think everything in the King James Version came from Hebrew and Greek. I could be wrong. There might be some Latin stuff in there, but no modern translation in English relies on any translations now. That's so. Yes, historically there were, but now we deal only with Greek originals. Blah blah blah. Now Gman just said, what did Gman just say? He said Matt thinks that the Bible is written by only one person. No, that's what some Christians like you think. You think only that God was the common co-author of every book. But Matt definitely is not confused on this point. He, a couple weeks ago, did a debate on the resurrection, and one of the first things he said was he acknowledges that the Protestant Bible, at least is 66 books. I forget what the number is for the Catholic books. It's more. 72, maybe? Don't remember. And, you know, that there was, I think he said 40 plus different authors, which I think is a number that some evangelicals throw around. I think there are actually probably some individual books in that thing that had more than 40 authors, but that's fine. So no, we're not confused, but I still have a For the Bible Tells Me So mug, because despite the fact that it's a collection of books by multiple authors, there are specific claims that are made by only one author. So, or at least only one book. So let's say, for example, the Tower of Babel, right? Tower of Babel, the claim for that is one. Tower of Babel probably is multiply attested, because I think the New Testament acknowledges Tower of Babel probably is replied. Jephthah, the Jephthah story, or the Job story, or a lot of the stories are in one book. The Jesus, the throwing the stones, he was about sin, let them throw the first stone story. The woman caught in adultery. Only one book, right? And that's probably that part probably an interpolation, inserted, forged. Let's see. I don't need to keep listing examples. You guys know what I'm talking about. Everything in the book of Revelation, right? Only in one book. So there are places where we are single attestation. And so when we're in single attestation mode, sorry, Michael has me doing administrative work right now. I can't actually do administrative work right now. I will get back to that in a second when I hit play. I will hit play. That's enough of a rant. Sophisticated people on this side acknowledge that the Bible is not a single unified book with a single author. That doesn't mean that it is not often a single attestation on a claim.
He's ignoring the thousands of years in between the different timelines of when certain books were written. Like, for example, when Moses wrote the first 5 books in the Old Testament.
Which is hilarious, because Gman thinks that Moses wrote the first 5 books of the New Testament. I wonder if Gman thinks that Moses wrote the parts of the first 5 books in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, in which Moses is dead. Where after Moses' passing, Aaron takes over, brother Aaron, and they, enter the promised land. That's in the first 5 books. G-Man, do you think that Moses wrote those portions of the Pentateuch as well? I'm just curious if that's a thing that you think happened. No? Maybe you do, actually. Maybe that is absolutely a thing that you do think happened. All right. Hit play.
You know what I mean? Which we commonly know as a creation in the Torah. Right? Very interesting that this man actually believed one person wrote it. One person wrote it, but he ignores the actual claims that we make concerning the Bible. The man still believes that the Bible is a book, when in reality, the Bible is a library of books. And only people who are spiritually ignorant and have never read their Bible, or somebody who just got saved yesterday and is hearing this for the first time, will come out there and say that only one person wrote it. Like,
Matt didn't say that, and I don't think he would say that. And I definitely said I won't say it. So move on.
It doesn't take a lot of time, Matt, if you happen to see this, to know that Moses wrote the Torah.
Yeah, no, see, that's the thing. You want to say people are sophisticated and know this stuff. No, sophisticated Christians understand that Moses did not write the Torah. There are doublets and triplets. There's the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, are so obviously edited from multiple sources that even if there are parts that Moses did write, that is not the 5 books we have. He may well have written part of it. Who knows? I don't think he did, but maybe. But the fact that you are insisting that Moses did write them shows that you are the non-sophisticated person here. Not Matt, not me, not other people. All right. Making people mods. Apparently that's a thing I'm doing right now.
It doesn't take a lot of time to figure out that Jeremiah and his scribes wrote the book of Jeremiah.
Again, no, it wouldn't take a lot of time to assume that Jeremiah wrote the book of Jeremiah. What does take a lot of time is to either be a scholar of those books and determine whether or not a claim is correct, and or at least read the scholarship that they write and make our own informed opinions, looking at the arguments for and against Jeremiah writing Jeremiah, and having an informed opinion. The extent of your research is going to the table of contents. If going to the table of contents is the extent of your gospel authorship or your biblical authorship journey, intellectual journey, then it is woefully inadequate. And you complaining that other people are going beyond taking the table of contents at their word is a claim right up there with being upset that new information might change their mind.
Which would be literally hundreds of years after Genesis was written.
Let me think about that. Was Jeremiah probably hundreds is correct, but what Gman would want to actually say is that there were thousands of years between when Genesis was written and when Jeremiah was written. It was probably a close call as to whether Genesis or Jeremiah was finalized within a couple hundred years of each other. Yeah, probably that's about right.
I'm getting to the point that when I listen to atheists talk about history, that I think they flunked it, kind of like they flunked gym, because a lot of them don't know how to work out either.
Okay, that's a weird flex, bro. You think that gym and history, that those are somehow related, that people can't be good at one and bad at the other or something? Or you just want to you're a macho alpha bro who feels like your physical fitness is somehow related to the arguments you're making, I guess.
That is sufficient evidence of a risen person.
Do you believe some news stories and not others?
I asked you a question.
Matt Dillahunty doesn't believe in eyewitness testimony. A lot.
That's not what he said. He didn't say he didn't believe in eyewitness testimony. What he said was eyewitness testimony is insufficient on its alone, on testimony alone, to establish a miracle. That's very different than saying I don't believe in eyewitness testimony. Matt has believed me even about things that I've merely told him about. Now, they may have been later corroborated. For example, he's believed me about we've done videos together about William Lane Craig's or other apologists' claims about him, and he accepts me at face value and says, "Hey, let's get on a stream and discover it." And he doesn't preview it, but I play it for him, and he gets on there on my testimony alone that William Lane Craig is going to be talking about him. And then it turns out to be correct, and I'm corroborated. But he does believe things on evidence. I've witnessed it happening. Now, you shouldn't necessarily believe what I just said about Matt on my testimony. This is where we get very meta. How extraordinary does the claim have to be that you will or won't believe it based on testimony? There's got to be some level of something that you won't accept testimony on. You won't accept testimony that I believed in Christianity, for example. You won't accept that testimony. Like if I was to say that I had a dragon in my garage, I wonder if you would accept that, or you maybe want to find out whether it was the kind of dragon that we really have, like a Komodo dragon, or do I mean something more from Game of Thrones? I don't know. That's all getting very meta, but disbelieving some testimony or reserving belief of some testimony is not the same as rejecting all testimony out of hand. That's all we're saying. And we have a super chat from Arthritic Thumb, regular viewer. Thank you, Arthritic Thumb. Gman doesn't know the Bible, and he doesn't know Chuck's history. I'm assuming you mean Charles Darwin. He's just flapping his lip. Well, in the end, that's all I'm doing too. There's certain things I know and don't know. But agree, those seem to be things that he doesn't know.
A lot of atheists will say that a lot of them are dumb enough to sit here and say that eyewitness testimony is the weakest form of evidence. Really? If eyewitness testimony is so weak, then why do police work so hard to get eyewitness testimony?
Sorry, someone in the super chat said, well, not super chat, just regular chat. Can you help Jimmy with his at least temporary stint as a VTuber? I knew that Jimmy had to take himself off screen for a while. I didn't know that he was going to attempt VTubing. That is interesting, and I will reach out to Jimmy tomorrow to see what that chat is. And this chat, I don't actually have myself set up as a VTuber. It's on my other show where I have that set up. But anyway, I absolutely will.
A crime. Somebody who actually saw something. I'm just saying, let that sink into your head a little bit. Let's continue. This is why I missed the great debate days, because Matt would have got eviscerated for saying this many dumb things in the show.
Eviscerated.
Story.
I'm
perfectly comfortable with it because I have spent a lot of time actually.
Your turn, because I have no interest in speaking with somebody who's perfectly comfortable with dismissing. Shut up! I'm talking.
Now you see how disrespectful he is. Now he's.
Yes, how disrespectful Matt is when you opened this up by calling people stupid and using other words that I'm not comfortable repeating about their intelligence. And yes, G-Man, you've been nothing but respectful. How dare Matt tell someone to shut up when you've been such a delight and a gentleman and paying attention to steelman everyone and take their feelings in consideration and any possible just miscommunications into consideration. Yeah, you've been nothing but stellar on that front. So by all means, criticize.
Getting into the shut up. You don't want to listen to what Matt has to say, and he's getting close to saying, and you're done. It's coming, ladies and gents. The historic is you're done is coming. Watch this.
With dismissing some firsthand accounts that are not particularly extraordinary or less extraordinary, and accepting.
I wouldn't necessarily discount all of them.
Okay, so
never mind.
Your issue here is that you're relying on personal anecdotes. Do you see that?
Well, I mean, it would be personal anecdotes from several different people.
That's fine. So
multiple sources.
Do multiple anecdotes equal empirical evidence? How does that work?
No, of course not. No,
okay.
I don't think you can prove a miracle in the same way you can prove science.
Okay,
I think it's ridiculous to suggest that one could.
Now.
Whoa! Don't tell G-Man that. G-Man thinks you can prove miracles by proving that science doesn't understand. right? If we go back to his definition, anything science doesn't understand is a miracle. So if you can prove that science doesn't understand something, then you got a miracle.
You would admit that empirical evidence would trump anecdotal evidence.
Now, here's the thing now, ladies and gents. If you're going to deal with an atheist and you allow them to dictate to you how evidence is proven, how evidence is shown, you'll notice in my chat that
it's not a matter of dictating. It's a matter of being open. And this is a complaint that Gman and I heard you make before. They won't tell us what would convince them. Well, if we're trying to lay out that testimony alone isn't going to convince us, that's not us dictating what is or isn't acceptable. It's us communicating what would be convincing. And ideally making someone else pause and think whether the lesser level of evidence should be sufficient for them to believe as well. But we're not dictating, because I can't dictate what you or anyone else will or won't accept. That's entirely in your head. There's nothing I can do to affect that.
people will claim to be Christians and will defend the atheistic mindset, not knowing that they're exposing the Antichrist spirit that's living inside of them, not knowing what I talk about on this YouTube channel.
Ah, the Antichrist spirit. That's hard to... I'd love to see the demonstration for how we know there's an Antichrist spirit and what, if anything, it's up to.
So pay attention to this live chat, ladies and gents. Pay attention to it, because people will expose themselves, right? So here's the thing now, okay? Science is not the only way we know things.
No.
Atheists believe that science is the only way we know things.
No.
Like I said, ain't nobody going out there when they get on the plane, going out there testing the engine, going out there testing the wings, going out.
I mean, someone is. The passengers aren't, because that would be very dangerous if we allowed passengers access to the engines and the wings. But in between flights, the engines and the wings are absolutely checked by someone. I think if you want to complain that I am going to be taking someone at their word, and that I'm going to trust that the financial best interest of the airline is that my plane arrives safely, because I know that they will take a huge financial hit and possible bankruptcy if the engines and the planes go unchecked and there are problems. I can trust the human greed. I can actually put some faith in human greed that those kind of precautions are in place and that I'm reasonable to step on a plane. Now, there are actually some airlines here in Canada. Good night, fat old guy. Night. It's 4:30 here. That there are some I trust some airlines more than others, just because I have actually often it has to do with how big they are and how much of a financial hit I know that they would take were something to happen. Sometimes some of these little lesser known fly-by-night places, they don't have as much to lose. So anyway, all that to say, yeah, people are checking the planes. That's what we should learn today. Aaron Colson writes, $5 super chat. Jeremiah was a single author the same way that Nancy Drew books are written by the same author, to say multiple authors writing under one name. Yeah, absolutely. Jeremiah, I don't really, again, it's just one of those, you're telling on yourself. If you insist that, if that's one of your examples that you're telling on yourself that we know who the author is, that's just a bad one. All right, let's carry on about how we're hypocrites for getting on planes.
They're making sure that the molecular structure on the plane is actually fit before they go sit on the plane. They have faith that somebody already did that.
Mm-hmm.
But they want you to not think that way. They want you to think that we use science to believe every little tiny thing. You know.
No, I don't know who you're talking to. You need to, maybe this is why you're so mad. And this is, maybe instead of having a Snickers, maybe there's some people you should just stop talking to, because maybe I've even heard that this happens. Maybe they're trolling you because you are a kind of personality that is fun to rile up. And perhaps there are people who know that you have certain buttons, certain hot button phrases or topics that make you angrier than others. And they're choosing to say those to you. These are all possible things.
As much as I love oatmeal, let me give you actually, matter of fact, I ain't gonna use oatmeal because I have this in front of me.
Dag nabbit, as much as I do, I also like oatmeal. I thought we were gonna get a story about oatmeal.
You want to know why I got food things in front of me? I was actually eating a little bit of chicken and rice and salad before the show. So,
okay, so first of all, no one was wondering. No one can see it. First of all, and if you inexplicably like, is anyone hey, why does Paul have a glass? Wonder what that might be for. Yeah, they don't they don't need. They weren't sitting there curiously. Hey, I wonder if Paul's having a drink. No one's wondering. But I'm glad you ate some chicken and rice and some salad. That sounds very healthy and probably helped you do really well in your gym class, which makes you smarter at history than other people somehow.
I have some Hunt's tomato ketchup here. I am not going to go to a microscope and make sure the exact ingredients that is put on here is on there before I actually drink this or eat this or whatever.
Wait, hold on. No. This is important. I don't care about them. Yeah, you're trusting that there's ketchup in there because similarly with the airlines, the Heinz company, or whichever company is making that ketchup, have a lot to lose if they start distributing packets that have something other than ketchup in them, right? They would be financially ruined. We can kind of, in a way, we can trust some of these systems because of capitalism. Like or hate capitalism, it does create some mechanisms by which you can trust some things. And yeah, Andrew, yeah, he's before he drinks the ketchup, which is an odd phrasing. I don't know who's drinking ketchup. But also, hold on. He said he's eating chicken and rice and salad. None of those things should have ketchup on it. You don't put ketchup on. This is just not, we're not negotiating this. Ketchup doesn't belong on salad. Ketchup doesn't belong on rice. Ketchup doesn't belong on chicken. So, the meal you described should have no reason, no reason to have ketchup. And this is funny. Yes. How can I trust someone who has rice when he could have oatmeal? Exactly. That's sus, as the kids say. Or at least the kids in 2020 would say. Or the grown-ups who are stuck at home.
Whatever. Or put this on my food. By faith, I'm going to trust that the Hunt's company, based on other people using Hunt's, is actually producing ketchup and not cyanide.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all in agreement on that.
But an atheist wants you to believe what they're doing is that they're taking the ketchup and they're putting the ketchup on a microscope, and they're checking the molecular structure to make sure that everything on the ketchup is actually doing good before they actually consume and digest this ketchup. Give me a break.
So how does this relate to God claims or whatever, right? Like how do you have something analogous, Gman, where God's in front of me, so some analogous thing where there's an army of people who are qualified experts who I know are there, and that there's a body that is taking responsibility for the truth claims, that if the claims turn out to be false, that there are severe penalties for them. Is there anything remotely analogous to what you just described to the thing, or are we more just in a situation again about the aliens, or with people getting their heads cut off? It's like, oh, you've proposed the hypothetical, that's in no way analogous. So can we somehow get to the actual evidence instead of you posing weird hypothetical situations? I think that's where we're at.
Evidence, correct?
Well, of course. Yeah, I mean, it'd be better evidence, but it doesn't mean that the other thing didn't happen.
Okay. So while I agree that some anecdotes can actually be true, it can.
And take the time out to look at the live chat here. You see how they're saying religion is poison. Somebody looked at their Fruity Pebbles and saw Jesus in it. This is how disrespectful they are. And then these same people will actually get mad at you when they ask you, do they deserve hell? And you tell them yes. If you
I'm confused about what thing that just happened in there warrants hell for those people. They said that Jesus showed up in their cocoa. Well, I guess that's a lie, right? If you are in the live chat of a show and you say Jesus showed up in my cocoa pebbles, you're presuming, Gman, that that's a lie. Oddly, you're not believing. That's testimony. I don't know why you're not just believing this. You believe that God is logically capable of showing up in someone's Fruity Pebbles. God is showing up for them, and you shouldn't you be angry that people are doubting that God showed up in your Fruity Pebbles? You're mad at Matt for not believing when God shows up in his scenario. The Fruity Pebbles thing you absolutely should be buying. You shouldn't be upset that they're lying and deserve to go to hell. Right?
mocking God, today's your day. When you die, you will be judged. Because after
Oh, I see. Suggesting that God shows up in Fruity Pebbles is mocking God. But suggesting that some glowing being showed up and told me he's God when I don't have sufficient warrant to say that it is, that's not mocking God. That's just having the good kind of faith. I see.
the death is the judgment. And you're going to get precisely what your works deserve.
Actually reflect reality, but that's contingent, right? Based on what we see in reality. Have you actually seen someone be resurrected, like actually be beheaded? Personally, have you?
No, of course not.
Okay,
so according to Dragnaut, you have to see someone rise from the dead in order to believe it. In other words, you got to be able to see with this. What does our Bible tell?
No. That is, hold on. Now I'm easily distracted. It's madness. The Paulogia is running 8-year-old Gman videos at 3 a.m. Is this real life? No, this video, he may be making an argument that he would have made 8 years ago. But this Gman video is literally from a couple months ago. Or less. Weeks ago, maybe even. Check it. I put it in the description. There's a link to it. It's 2024, baby. It just looks like, 2016 or whatever that was. Okay. Now I lost what the claim. You distracted me in the chat. I lost the claim that Gman was just making. Oh, does Dragonaut have to see a resurrected person to believe in it? That's not what Dragonaut said. Dragonaut asked if he'd seen it because the caller was making claims about things that he could see, like beheadings or other things, right? So Dragonaut's just asking, is Jesus' resurrection in the same category as the hypotheticals that you were positing? That's all.
Right? What does our Bible tells us? That we walk by faith and not by what? And not by sight. Is it?
So you're inadvertently affirming the blind faith definition of faith that you don't like. But okay.
Possible that our eyes could deceive us? Yes or no? Can we be looking at something where someone is attempting to deceive?
Yes, Michael, I think you're actually correct. The atheist experience has been going all in on posting legacy clips, which is fun. And so you're probably right. But even it is also possible that this is purely just an 8-year-old atheist experience clip. But the Gman commentary is fresh. So this is where we are. I suppose if someone enlarged that graphic image there, we could maybe see which Gman video it is linked to exactly. Atheist Experience 23.52. Oh, that would be like 52. That would be like the end of the year, I think, with Matt Dillahunty and Dragnot. Anyway, someone could probably find that video and let us know. So the Gman video is recent. We don't know how old the Atheist Experience clip is.
Deceive us. Obviously, the question is yes. I can literally go into my editing program, change everything that this man is saying to God-friendly things if I wanted to. And I can do the same thing to Matt Dillahunty. You'll be surprised what you can do with AI these days. You'll be shocked what you can do with it.
But you can't post it on YouTube without self-declaring anymore. That's a weird thing that's new. I guess you can, but if you get caught, then actually I'm not sure there are repercussions either. They want us to self-volunteer. If you've altered the essence of what someone is saying via AI. New days.
You can make a person say whatever you want them to say.
Or like in Madame Web, where you just, re-record the lines and then you have them say that. Or if you want to have fun, look up Paulogia en Español channel, which is my new Spanish channel. Clearly, by the way I say Paulogia en Español, I don't actually speak Spanish. And yet if you go there, I'll be speaking Spanish there. Don't believe it. It's not. It's one of those darn computers.
So your eyes and your ears can deceive you. Christians are called to walk by faith and not by sight. Because a God that knows everything, who understands all topics and not just one, which happens to be science, understands that there are going to be times that you're going to have to accept things on faith based on the available facts that we have. And for the atheists that believe that we're operating on blind faith, you clearly don't know what Christian faith is, and you clearly don't know what pistis is, which is the faith that we put into practice.
Well, then,
But I think that if it was the case that it happened enough times throughout history where everybody got to see it, it would be so commonplace that it wouldn't really be accepted as
that is a load of bullshit. That is absolutely a load of bullshit. Because even if it becomes so commonplace that it's no longer extraordinary,
but
like if people
we gotta take this into consideration, because this is why atheists don't like me on social media. This is one of a million reasons they don't like me on social media.
I was gonna say it's probably not the reason, but okay, if it's one of a million.
So what you're telling me is that if I don't see it, I don't have to believe it, right? If I don't see it, then I don't have to believe it. Okay.
Nobody said that.
Okay, fine, no problem. If I have to see everything in order to believe it, then I'm fully justified for not believing in a theory of evolution. Come and think about it. Since I've never seen a molecule, I don't have to believe in a molecule. I've never seen an atom before.
There probably, depending on your definition of justification, you are probably a person would probably say you are justified in not believing in molecules or not believing in theory of evolution. You're not. There would definitely be a case to say that if that's a justified belief. It's not a justified true belief, and it is not and justified in the philosophical sense, not in the scientific sense, right? Not in the that you have actually come to a best inference. But a case can be made, right? Because for thousands of years, people didn't believe in molecules, and they were all justified because there wasn't sufficient evidence. So if you are unaware or merely unconvinced by the evidence for molecules, I guess philosophically at least you're justified. My dog's justified in not believing in molecules, for example, right? Because my dog doesn't know.
So you know what? I don't gotta believe in an atom based on this stupidity, right? I've never seen the privates of a person who had a sex change. I don't gotta believe they exist if I don't want to.
That's weird. I believe people exist. You haven't seen their privates, so you don't believe they exist? Or that you don't believe that their privates are different than what you think that's a weird statement. If unless I see your privates, I don't believe you exist, is a weird take.
You gotta listen to nobody's claim. It's stupid. It's a really dumb way to live your life. An intelligent way to live your life is to hear what the person is saying, look at the evidence that's been presented, and then operate on faith afterwards, like we all do on a regular basis. I promise you this: when Matt gets in his car, he's not checking his engine, he's not checking his oil, he's not checking his brakes, he's not checking the suspension, he's not checking all of those things in his car before he decides to drive somewhere every single day. At some point, this man's going to operate by faith. Okay, let's continue.
We're being killed and resurrected daily. That fundamentally does not mean that it would be dismissed in the case of the resurrection that you prefer. This isn't
Jesus' resurrection would remain unique if it happened on a regular basis.
Okay, so now you think it's unique, and
no, I'm asking. I know, I believe it is unique. I think Jesus.
By the way, shout out to the
actually
caller for saying that. You made Matt look like a total dunce when you said that, but let's continue.
Did he?
Because, you know, there's nothing unique about it if I got to see somebody rise from the dead every single day in order to believe in a resurrection. It's a really interesting thing that you could talk to atheists about regarding abiogenesis, whether or not life comes from non-life or not. You can have a lot of fun with atheists on the topic of the resurrection if you know a thing or two about abiogenesis.
Wait, what? The abiogenesis and the resurrection have nothing to do with each other. I could accept that God, the Jewish God, hold on, this is not just weird. There are millions of Jews in the world who absolutely accept that God created the earth. In some way or form, they reflected in the book of Genesis. That any naturalistic view of abiogenesis is ridiculous. Absolutely, but they also don't believe that Jesus resurrected. Those two claims, nothing to do with each other, right? You can absolutely reject materialistic abiogenesis and believe, and also not believe in the resurrection. All combinations are possible. This is just crazy. Again, I've debated the resurrection many times. No one's ever brought up abiogenesis. This would be an interesting take.
I can show you a video where Matt Dillahunty got absolutely humiliated on the atheist experience on abiogenesis alone to show him why he actually does believe in the resurrection, if he believes in abiogenesis, that life can come from non-life. Think about that a minute. If Jesus is dead and his body is lifeless and he is rising from the dead on the third day, right? And his body becomes alive again. And this man actually believes that non-living organisms can become living organisms. This man should have no problem with the resurrection whatsoever.
No. Those are not the same. And also, I don't believe that Matt, and definitely not myself, would ever say that resurrection cannot happen. That's not a claim I would make. What we need to know is what we need to find out is, can a resurrection happen? Give me sufficient evidence to believe that it can, because there are no other resurrections that we have sufficient evidence for. I don't know why this one's different. Not saying it can't happen. So we absolutely do know, no matter whether God created life or nature managed it all on its own, there was a point in time on the earth where the earth had no life, and then there was a time on earth where there was life. So some form of abiogenesis happened because we know that there is life and that there once wasn't. So that's all the evidence we need for that.
Matter of fact, you can use abiogenesis to prove that the resurrection is very scientifically possible.
Yeah, no one's going with the scientifically impossible, Gman. So Try again.
according to their logic. That video is coming in the future, ladies and gents. It's going to rip them apart on Abiogenesis. So.
Ooh, looking forward to that.
Experience the true resurrection in the way it's described in the Gospels.
Really?
My question
So you're dismissing when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and you're dismissing the dead when the dead rose on Jerusalem when the curtain was torn?
He died after. Yeah, no, I mean Lazarus died after, and everybody else.
Matt Dillahunty doesn't even know the significance of the veil being torn. He doesn't understand what that means. Is that we no longer have to go to a high priest; that we have direct access to God Himself.
Matt doesn't need to understand the symbolism, although I suspect he does, the symbolism of the veil being torn, to talk about whether or not it actually happened. Again, whether or not it actually happened, separate issue from, if so, what does it mean?
Dillahunty doesn't know a lot of stuff about the things that we believe, but we're supposed to believe that this man went to seminary school, and we're supposed to believe that this man actually knows a thing or two about Christianity, when Matt Dillahunty knows little to nothing about what we believe as Christians. And if he doesn't know anything, I can assure you, the person he's sitting next to, Dreadnought, knows even less.
After what?
Well, he lived. It's not as though he lived forever, right? He's not like alive now. He still died again.
Okay.
Like I'm a paramedic, and if we get like a resuscitation,
you are now officially. I wish I had a crown to give you as the king of post hoc rationalizations. You are dancing around, and every time I point to a problem with your belief,
no, Matt. You get frustrated when you don't know how to refute a Christian who knows what they're talking about. You did it to me. You did it to S.J. Thomas. And you did it to a lot of people who.
No, those are the two names that I would put forth. They're neck and neck as the worst YouTube Christian apologists. The two names he just said. I won't even deign to repeat them. But those are the two. Matt did not have problems with either of you. There's a reason why those calls were often replayed as embarrassing. They were not embarrassing for you. Is this a dress rehearsal for Sunday show? Maybe. I probably should end this soon and get some sleep so that, when the Sunday show comes around, which is now in like 36 hours. No, 36 hours-ish, getting on the way. I don't know how many times I can sleep between now and then, so we should probably wrap this up soon. But yeah, a little bit. For those who don't know, I'm going to be with Matt on the Sunday show. But also, more importantly, Monday night, Matt is going to make his debut on this channel. Monday night, it will be Matt and Shannon and myself and Arden. We are all going to be doing a charity stream for Shannon's MS walk, and we will be watching Answers in Genesis review Marvel movies. So we're 4 Marvel fans, 4 anti-Answers in Genesis people, and we're going to be having a great time, and it will all be for charity. So yeah, definitely tune in on Sunday for me and Matt taking calls, but more importantly, come right back to this channel Monday night to catch Matt and 2 lovely ladies and myself all having fun with Answers in Genesis and Marvel movies all in one stream. So stay tuned for that. With that, I kind of feel like I wanted to get through the end of this call, but I don't think I can. I think it'd be irresponsible. It's now 5 for me, so I think I should wrap it up, call it a day. Thank you for everyone for hanging out with me. This was great. I was a little wired and going to be up till now anyway. So the fact that you guys hung out with me made this time pass quickly and great for my mental health. Hope it was great for yours, that we had a little bit of fun in a lighthearted stream. Gman's not that serious a fellow. At least I don't think. So it's a fun thing to do. I hope you all stay rational, stay calm, and until next time, later.